Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, TheWhatifguy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What if Issei started a hungry for ancient relic. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic.
Issei Hyodu coughed up blood onto the ground. The battleground was filled with smoking craters and he could spy his broken sword a few feet away from him. Boost, your usefulness has come to an end, Sekuruyute. Rain poured down upon the two warriors. A black-haired man holding a spear by his side and a boy in draconic crimson armor clenched his fists. Just shut the FCK up and fight me. He spat a glob of blood to the side. A strained, cocky smile was on his lips. He was rewarded with a swift smack across his head, the helmet breaking apart. You are foolish, Sekuruyute. Look at how the world treats us. We're nothing but tools to them. Humanity has been stamped on by the devils, fallen angels, and yokai. We're either cannon fodder to them or collateral damage. Issei felt Cao Cao drag him up, looking him in the eye. Don't you understand? I'm doing this for humanity. Is that what it takes to be a great hero? He croaked, his armor healing itself. To commit genocide and kill because of who they are. Boost. Cao Cao's eyes hardened with resolve. Yes, rage. A white-hot burning rage was building within him. Issei knew that he was going to die. Blood and sweat fell on his shaking hands. Each breath was becoming harder than the last. 3 superior opponents wielding weapons that could unleash nightmares, rain destruction, or simply obliterate him from the face of the earth. That's not for you to decide, Issei declared. His hands had stopped shaking. Nothing but absolute determination filled him. His hand reached up, grabbing Cao Cao by the neck. Are you ready, partner? If we're gonna go down, let's go down swinging. It is. I will save humanity even if you won't, and I will use Offai's power to do so. He couldn't control it anymore. He wanted to tear him apart at those words. A corona of energy burst forth from him as the dragon within responded to the call, howling in fury. What did you say? Issei was too far gone as he roared, charging towards the people who dared take Offai's away from him. A massive explosion dominated the landscape. Winds buffeted boulders away and the very sky cracked open. Then ... all was silent. A silence that was broken by the rain. Oniya-chan, wake up, Oniya-chan. Honey brown eyes shot up. His fist swung towards the air, but he stopped before he reflexively opened his hands and hugged his little sister to his chest. It's okay, Oniya-chan. It's okay. The little girl mumbled into his shirt. Safe. He was safe. He wasn't there anymore. He had lived past that. He was stronger. Yes, he was. Stronger. Honey brown eyes stared into his own. Yeah, I'm okay, Olivia. Issei kept telling himself that lie. Huo Academy, an all-private girls' school. Once upon a time, that had turned co-ed. It was universally acknowledged that to be accepted into such a prestigious school, you must have the intelligence, power, and wealth to do so. A massive building designed for the best and brightest that Japan had to offer reflected that very status. It was perhaps a wonder how a lazy deadbeat managed to get in. And this tale begins on the life of what many students had considered to be insignificant, and for some a stain upon their esteemed reputation. The brunette boy yawned into his hand, scribbling away in his notebook. He tapped his foot erratically while the teacher droned on about math. His brown eyes shifted to the clock that was ever so slowly ticking closer to the end of the period, and he couldn't help but heave a sigh in resignation. He had nothing against the subject, but there was something to be said when a person's voice completely turned you off from reality. He spotted movement and noticed his hand was trembling again, the fingers rapping on the wood, and he flexed and squeezed the muscle and joints for it to stop. A normal life, he said. A world where he didn't have to deal with the affairs of the supernatural, where the only thing he had to worry about were girls and sports. To do the same routine every day, to wake up at the same ungodly hour, wear the same uniform that chafed horribly, and attend the lectures and deal with the inane whispers of students was somehow more terrifying and painful than facing a basilisk in a life and death battle. The not-so-subtle pointing and whispered ridicule of his scruffy appearance and general lack of wealth didn't irk him at all. Not really. Aside from that, he appreciated the normalcy of it all. There were often periods of extreme boredom, such as the long-winded and very much forgotten lecture that the man was giving to the class. Fortunately, that was when lunch had arrived and he tucked all of his books under his arm. He didn't make it past 2 steps when his books were knocked out of his hands by a stocky teen. The disrespectful boy, Sato, sneered, "Watch where you're going, deadbeat." He only gave a half-hearted shrug before going back to pick his books up again. Yeah, what a normal life. Ria's Gremory. The heiress to the Gremory clan was a beautiful girl with long crimson hair, and a buxom figure that earned her the title of one of the 2 great ladies, alongside Akino Himejima, her queen. To her peerage and a select few students, they were devils, one of the 3 factions in the Judeo-Christian religion. Ria's, however, was in quite a difficult situation. She was facing off against her rival and childhood friend, Sona Citri or Sauna Shitori, a fellow devil and heir to the Citri clan, in a duel of wit and intelligence. Rias paused, taking a look at the chessboard before her, and moved her rook forward. She'd enjoy her daily matches against Sona, the student president of Kyo Academy, but damn was it infuriating that she could never be able to beat her. She hit it well with her smile, but they both knew that she was cornered. Checkmate, Sona said. You win again, Sona. It seems that my strategies can't get past you, Ria said. She started collecting her pieces. You almost had me at one point. Almost being the key word. Have you found a way, Ria's? Sona asked. Ria's hand stilled when it reached for a pawn before she picked up the piece. Yes, if all goes well, then I believe that I found my trump card. Does this trump card involve Issei Hyaudu? Yes. Are you planning on letting him die to gain his loyalty? Yes, Ria said, but with less conviction than before. Did you confirm that he has a sacred gear? Yes, he has a very powerful one, but it was hard determining it in the first place, and I don't understand why. It's like it's locked away or sealed deep inside him. That's odd. It seems like it should require some investigation. Ria stiffened before narrowing her eyes at her words. What are you planning, Sona? Nothing. I'm just making sure to check if he has what you need in the first place. Sona pushed her glasses up, not looking at Ria's. Is that so? Of course. Issei smacked his head down onto the bench. A distinct feeling of utter exhaustion washed over him when he sat down. He angled his head upwards and saw the mischievous face of Eika Kuryu staring down at him. Eika was a second-year student like Issei with loosely braided hair on both sides of her face. She had the curves and bust of a budding teenage girl that was accentuated by her uniform. She peered down behind her glasses and Issei could feel a headache coming on. Oh ho, tired on a Monday. Did you spend all weekend pleasuring girls as a gigolo? Go away, he moaned. Or was it your job as a stripper for the ladies in the red light district? Are you always this annoying, or is today special? He glared half-heartedly. Oh, you know I rejoice in the suffering of my best male friend. She pinched his cheek in amusement. Issei smacked her hand away from him and sat up on his desk, giving his full attention to the girl in front of him. If you really want to know, Mako-sensei has been driving me and the other assistants crazy with her spontaneous ideas and deadlines. You could say that she's been riding you hard all weekend. She grinned perversely. Shut up. Foo. Anyway, some asshole decided to steal my bike, so I had to walk all the way home and my body is aching to go into a coma at any time now. That's rough. And how's Olivia? No, Awa, I was just asking how she was doing. The last time I let you near her I had to explain where babies came from, putting her outside of. Your influence is good for me. Hey, she got an early sec ed from her brother. That's a big plus in your book. She was 5. Oh, I swear you are a walking ball of lust and corruption. I'm surprised those two haven't keeled over from your presence. He pointed at Matsuda and Madohama. I'm not that bad. I do have a lot of self-respect and dignity, thank you very much. Ah yes, Eika was something of a boogerman in the hallways of Kyo Academy. Even though guys fantasize about girls coming after them, they did not expect Eika, who was so forward with her intentions that it frightened the small number of males in the academy away. She was the combination of the perverted duo and oh so much worse than them. Luckily, Issei was the best meat shield they could throw at her, and the two struck up an odd friendship where he wasn't too put off by her innuendos and she could use Issei to discuss every idea and fantasy that she had. Truly, a friendship forged in the fires of teenage hormonal lust and the tears of the frightened male population. Should I let slip about your size to the ladies? I'm sure you'll get a date. Do it and I swear I'll withdraw your dango privileges. You monster. Oddly enough, that is the size of your D, she began to say loudly, which was muffled by Issei's hand. The students looked curiously in their direction and Issei had to withdraw his hand from her mouth, which spotted a Cheshire grin. You are pure evil, Issei grumbled, and Eika could only laugh at his misfortune. The perverted duo were currently enjoying the sights of the kendo club members undressing and Issei sleeping soundly against a wall as he tried to catch up on some sleep. Both were trying to catch a view of S, however their inner greed to see some flesh caused a fight amongst themselves. Matsuda, it's my turn now. Shut up, Madohama, I can almost see it. Madohama shoved him aside and peeked. It's amazing. How did you hear that? Someone's peeping on us. What's with all the commotion? Issei said. He stifled a yawn before he was pulled away from dreamland and saw Matsuda and Madohama's frightened faces before dashing away. This is bad. The kendo club is after us. Madohama said. It's fine, Issei said. He dug his heels into the ground and faced the oncoming dust cloud. I'll talk to them. Let's go. He was met with strong protests from the other two. You're joking, right? Matsuda shook his head frantically. Don't you know the saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? He's right, so let's get the hell out of Dodge. And besides, what the hell are you gonna do to face that? Madohama asked. Like I said, I'm gonna bullshit my way out. Issei stepped closer to the cloud. Both Matsuda and Madohama grimly nodded to each other. Suddenly, they pulled out hammers and whacked Issei behind the head. Issei sagged on the spot, falling to his knees unconscious. Issei blinked his eyes open as he felt something poke him on the side. Slowly, he looked up to see the members of the kendo club staring down at him in righteous feminine fury, all equipped with their shinai as well. Oh, this is so not a good day. Issei stared up to see Murayama and Kades, the captain and vice-captain to the kendo club respectively. Murayama was a brunette girl with her hair tied in pigtails and a taut figure. She held a bakken in her hand, and he could swear that her amber eyes glowed with an unholy murderous light. Kades was a shorter girl in comparison, with pink hair and reddish-brown eyes and a slim figure. "Just tell us where they are, Hayao," Kades said serenely. That was betrayed by the aura of wrath around her and the other club members. "Can't we talk about this in a civil manner?" Issei had sweat dripping down his brow, and he tried to move away, but his back met the wall. "Oh, we are going to settle this civilly with this bakken hitting someone's crotch. Repeatedly, I might add. It's your choice whether it's yours or theirs," Murayama said sweetly. "Aw shit," he thought as they came closer to him. Wait, hold on. Alright, if you're interested in beating someone, how about we settle this in a match?" Seeing some of the unconvinced gazes from the ladies of the kendo club, Issei decided to give them some incentive. "If you win, I will be your personal gopher for the week in place of Matsuda and Madohama. You can order me to do anything you want while we're in school." That is a tempting offer, Hayao, but what's in it for you?" Murayama said. Her eyes still held skepticism in them. "If I win, you have to leave Matsuda and Madohama alone, and I'll make sure that they don't peep on you for a week. A win-win situation if you think about it," Issei offered. "Alright, I accept your bet. Meet us inside the kendo club after school." Great. Sauna Shitori, or Sona Citri, as she was better known to her informed companions, loved a mystery when she was presented with one, so she thought that finding out who Issei Hayao was going to be easy. But it was proving to be difficult, however, when all she could come up were elementary records that stopped in the 3rd grade. Nothing about his parents or where he came from. Issei mysteriously appeared in Kyoto Town a few months ago and had already built up a reputation as a deadbeat. Nothing about him made sense, she thought a bit irritably. Certainly not the others who came the same time as him. Kaichu, Murayama and Issei are going to have a match in the kendo club," a blonde boy said, bursting into the room. "Saji, what did I say about bursting into the room?" Sona said, her glasses glinting, and Saji flinched. Not to. "I don't believe you've learnt your lesson. After I go down to investigate, I'll have to give you a remedial lesson," Saji whimpered. Issei walked into the kendo club, spotting a large number of girls all waiting in the stands and giving him a glare. That would have combusted him on the spot and scattered the ashes to the wind. "Oh good, the whole school is here. Never knew I was so popular," he thought dryly until he spotted Matsuda and Madohama with a large amount of cash in hand. "Place your bets here. All bets are here. See how long the deadbeat of the school can last against the captain of the kendo club." Issei growled, seeing them run a betting pool and seeing that a lot of people were betting in favor of him losing. "Hey, what the hell do you think you guys are doing?" "Aw, Issei, thanks for taking the fall for us back there. We're using your total humiliation and defeat to our advantage," Matsuda stated matter-of-factly. "Don't worry, we'll give you a big cut for this golden opportunity," Madohama responded. "Plus we get to look at the girls here up close and not get in trouble for it." Issei blinked, once then twice, as an idea entered his mind. "Anyone betting on me to win? Aside from Eika and a few others, no one is dumb enough to make that bet." Issei's jaw twitched in irritation before he shoved a couple of crumpled notes from his pocket into their hands. "I'll bet 4,000 yen on me. And when I win, I'll be sure to get my winnings from everyone who bet against me." "You sure you want to lose your money too?" Matsuda said awkwardly as he held the notes in hand. Issei ignored them and turned around. He spotted Eika in the stands, chin in hand, with her perpetual grin still in place. "Thanks." Issei bowed his head as Eika perked up at the sight of him. "You're welcome, although are you really going to honor your agreement with Murayama? Actually, that reminds me, I need to make an amendment on my side of the bet. By the way, how much did you bet on me?" "Oh, not much, only 10,000 yen. Issei almost stumbled when he walked away, but was nonetheless touched by the faith she had in him. He walked up to the sparring mat to see Murayama outfitted in her traditional kendo outfit. "Are you ready to lose?" A cocky smirk was on her lips. "Actually, I'd like to make an amendment on my side of the bet." She frowned at this information and crossed her arms. "Sorry, but you can't change the bet at this stage." "Oh, this will benefit you, if you listen." He walked up and whispered in her ear as her eyebrows raised before a smile was plastered on her face. I'll make an exception, Hayao-san." She tossed him the helmet and shinai, which Issei caught easily. She was about to give him his armor when he held up his hand. "You do know this stuff is to protect you, right? I'm not that cruel that I won't leave you without protection." "I know, but I figured without protection you could smack me really hard and it would make me try harder not to get hit by you." You're crazy," Murayama said, putting her helmet on. "The odds are stacked against me. Pretty much everyone in the school is betting against me and no cup to protect my balls." "Matt, this could be worse." Issei settled into a relaxed stance, gripping the shinai in his left hand. "Look, the deadbeat doesn't even know how to hold a shinai. Oi, doesn't he sleep all day in class? Are you not taking me seriously?" Murayama fumed at seeing his relaxed stance. "Don't worry, it's all part of my master plan." he said, doing a couple of exaggerated swings. In the process, he accidentally dropped his shinai. Shit, Murayama was stuck between incredulity and rage. I'm gonna hit you now. I don't know when I'll stop. The latter emotion won out. Issei backed away from a jab, pivoting using his head before he kicked up his shinai and parried a hit. He watched her with a grin. She tried to wipe grin off his face, but he parried each strike, spinning on his foot as he backpedaled away from the stabs to his midsection. She rushed forward. The captain's shinai sliced through the air, aiming for Issei's neck only to be met with wood. Both of them were only inches apart. Is that peach I smell? Murayama's assault was reinvigorated with that comment. She snarled in frustration as every hit she made was blocked or parried. Stab, slash, thrust before the two wooden swords pushed against each other for dominance. One held in the traditional two-hand grip and the other held in Issei's one-handed grip. You know, you're not so bad, Hayao-do, Murayama commented offhandedly with a smile, sounding less antagonized and more eager. That's high praise coming from a two-time champion in the Japanese national circuit. Murayama was pushed back and she held her shinai closely to herself. Issei shifted and he held the sword with two hands. Murayama narrowed her eyes. As before, she could find openings in his stances, and now the hairs on the back of her neck raised in anticipation of what he would do next. You're really amazing, but you want to know a little secret. Oh, and what's that? She couldn't help but say arrogantly. I've been holding back. Issei's grin became predatory and he rushed forward. Murayama found herself on the defensive as she had to use everything in her arsenal to keep from being hit. Until finally, a single stab to her abdomen ended that thought. She grimaced, feeling the pain in her abdomen, and Issei pulled back, giving her time to recover. You are full of surprises today. Hayao-do, I think you may be overestimating my skills here. Wood smacked against wood as they continued their exchange. Murayama's sword struck his shoulder and Issei's struck her shoulder pads. You let me hit you. It wasn't a question but a statement. Can you prove it? A challenging smirk on his lips. I guess I'll have to beat it out of you. Her strikes became more ferocious, focused as they continued with the intent to hit him. Each strike brushed past his uniform, leaving cuts as if an actual blade was in her hand. All thoughts of the bet were forgotten in her mind as she focused entirely on this spar. No, this dance. The feeling of exhilaration, the thrill of the battle with an opponent that was her equal and yet so much stronger that he was driving her past her limits. Nothing was said between them as the wooden sword smacked loudly in the club. No one said anything in awe of the duel between them. Enjoying yourself, said Issei. You're proving to be more of a challenge than I thought. I don't suppose you would consider going on a date with me? The question caught her off guard. She barely managed to block Issei's slash. Why, aren't we having fun? I'll show you fun. She glanced off to the side to see. Kiba was here. This was her chance to impress him. Issei had left himself open for a decisive strike that would knock him out. He was already in the middle of a strike and she could pull back and hit him, sending him out of the ring. The shinai cut through empty air and she was confused before pain exploded in her abdomen. Issei's shinai splintered and she tumbled outside the sparring mats. Silence descended as Murayama struggled to get up to her feet. Her breaths ragged and the shinai was barely assisting her in getting up, but she managed to hold on weakly. You're not done yet, Hayao-do. Issei's face snapped in surprise and Murayama was about to move forward to strike. Before her eyes rolled up in her head and she fell forward, only to be caught by a pair of strong arms. She groaned, hoping that Kiba has caught her. Opening her eyes, she was expecting to see Kiba's dreamy gray eyes, but saw Honeybrown look at her in concern. Hey, you okay? You're pretty good, Issei. Those were her last words before she fell unconscious. After bringing Murayama to the nurse's office and seeing that the nurse was about to question the state of his uniform, Issei left and came back to the club only to be met with a mixed reception ranging from fear to anger and shock at his accomplishments, which unnerved him, but he put on a brave face. He reached Eika, who held up his winnings to him, which he pocketed before he turned to the perverted duo who were ready to hightail it out of there. Where do you think you guys are going? He grabbed both of them by the back of their shirts and they turned their heads robotically, seeing the aura of wrath surrounding Issei. Hey, Issei, did you get your winnings? Matsuda stammered, sweat pouring down his face. Yeah, see, you win and you got lots of money and we don't get beat up. Win-win, Madohammer responded. I actually changed the bet on my part. Instead, I reduced the time that you have before the kendo club gets you again to 5, Issei stated calmly before he released them. 5 what? 5 days, 5 weeks, 0.5 months. They both said, feeling their hopes soaring. Matsuda and Madohama's hopes were soon dashed, however. 4.3, 0.2, unbeknownst to them. The entire kendo club were behind the two and they were itching to get their revenge. Issei and Eika walked away, missing the curious gaze of the handsome prince of the school. And he left the club to inform his master of the developments that had transpired. The duo learned that day that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Woo, you were amazing back there. The way you stabbed and thrust your stick at her, at every angle, and you rammed it in until she was left panting exhausted at the end. Issei paused before turning to Eika with an incredulous expression. Does everything have to be a sick joke with you? Yes, was her blunt reply. But still, that was literally unbelievable what you did back there. It's not that hard, you saw it yourself. You struck a girl so hard that you shattered the shinai you were using against her. Without her armor, I'm sure she should be in the hospital at this moment. I didn't mean for that to happen. Eika gasped when she saw his bruised hands, and Issei looked down at them in confusion. Why didn't you get something for your hands when you were at the nurse's office? She hissed, grabbing his wrists to inspect them. I'm fine, this is nothing. He tried to pull away from her surprisingly strong grip. It's not nothing, Issei. We're going to get some bandages at least. Eika dragged the protesting boy to the large supermarket, unaware of the small smile that graced Issei's lips momentarily. Issei found himself on the bridge, staring out into the sunset. As he mulled over what the events of the day. I hate Mondays. I have zero sleep over the weekend. I injure the captain of the kendo club, and now pretty much everyone are either afraid or they hate me. On the plus side, I have enough to pay for rent this month, which is nice. Issei leant against the railing, staring at the sunset after assuring Eika that he would be fine and getting home. He waited for a while, only to be met with silence, and a heavy sigh left his lips. Who am I kidding? That's a pretty weak reason for hurting Murayama like that. Quite so, Hyodosen. He turned around to see Sona and her vice president standing before him. Ah, Kaichu, Fukukeichu. It's lovely to see both of you, but why are you here? I'm just here to ask you a few questions. Hey, if this is about the match between me and Murayama, just know I had zero protection. Yes, we'll get to that soon, but there's been a few anomalies that I found in your file. Issei was looking around before he got off the rail. What sort of anomalies? I looked into your files and I found that you only completed 3 years of elementary school, and anything else after that is missing. It's as if you vanished into thin air until your entrance into this school a few months ago. But isn't all my information there? Falsified information. Now tell me, how and why did you get into school? I'm really into education. With the grades you're getting, that's highly unlikely. I heard that this used to be an all-female school, so why not? An acceptable reason for a normal boy, but I don't think you're the type of person despite the company you keep. Would you believe me if I said that an old man asked me to come here? Seeing the unamused look that she was giving him, he chuckled in response. What do you want then? The truth, Hyodosen, or should I say Sekuruyute? The moon hung high in the sky as Kyo's nightlife bustled about, and for one lone high school student this afforded her the opportunity to think. Murayama wandered listlessly through the streets of Kyo town, walking past the neon-lit clubs, and she sat herself on the park bench. She traced her fingers over her stomach where she had been struck and paused. She vaguely remembered the feeling of adrenaline rushing through her, the excitement, the intensity, and the thrill of danger. Whatever Issei was before he stepped foot onto the mat was not the same person she faced before. It was like staring down a wild beast. So much power and the fear. Nothing had gotten her so excited, and then it was over. She had lost. He had looked at her with such kindness. Nothing like the lazy boy that he projected himself to be. Are you all right there, pretty girl? Who was that? She thought. It was a man. A sleazy guy by the looks of it. Judging by the cheap suit that he wore, the musky cologne and the haircut were better left unsaid. He wore a lecherous grin, and that was all she needed to know about him. Yes, I'm all right. I was just about to leave. The man's hand was clasped to her wrist. What's the rush, honey? Let's enjoy some good company. A few suited men came out of hiding and surrounded her. You'll regret that. She flipped the gangster, kicking his chin before another man grabbed her, stuffing her face with a foul-smelling rag. Someone else, she tried to scream. She needed help. SHH, just be quiet and it'll all be over quickly. Everything was getting dark, and all she could think. Help me. Yesterday's events played through Issei's mind as he walked to school. How did things escalate to the point where Murayama challenged him to a match, with the whole school viewing to boot? A cynical part of Issei's mind reminded him that it was his two friends who had left him to the kendo club's tender mercies. You tried your best and it still wasn't enough for them, Issei thought, a part of him relishing the fact that karma paid them back. Issei pinched the bridge of his nose when he remembered the headache of meeting Sona. Less than 3 months and the supernatural still found him. He wanted a normal life. Was that too much to ask? Issei. He opened his eyes to see Eika staring at him. Issei curiously. Issei, what are you doing? I was walking to school, Issei said. You've been standing in the same spot for the past 3 minutes, Eika said with a neutral expression. He looked around to see some bystanders were staring at him oddly. He shuffled forward and began walking again, with Eika falling into step beside him. What's with you today? Issei grumbled at the question. He was getting distracted, restless. A part of him roared and snapped. The urge to fight, to battle, to kill. What are you talking about? Eika bumped into his shoulders. All her usual cheer and flirtatious attitude was still there. You're Mr. Grumpy today. No one likes grumpy old men. What does that make you? Why, the sassiest girl you've ever met and someone who wants to know what she can do to make you feel better, Eika said with confidence. Issei marveled how she was never embarrassed at what she was saying. I'm not grumpy, I'm fine. This isn't about Murayama, is it? You didn't hurt her that badly. She walked out of the nurse's office on her own. To be fair, I did put her there in the first place. Geez, are we going to be here all day? Look, she challenged you. You accepted. She had armor. You didn't, and guess what? You won, she lost. She's a big girl. She can take a loss. Issei didn't say anything in response, breathing a resignated sigh. I hope you're right. But I think my infamy has surpassed Matsuda and Madohama's. So what's with the doom and gloom? Smile. You beat her, fair and square. Now the school knows you're not just a poor, lazy, defenseless deadbeat. Hey, now you're a poor, lazy deadbeat who can kick people's ass. Yeah, well, what else can go wrong? As Eika and Issei walked past the main gates of the school, they saw everyone give huddled whispers to each other. Some of the girls were shooting him heated looks. There was tension in the air and he could feel all of it being directed at him. He was offered a small medium of relief when he saw Matsuda and Madohama. Yo, Issei. Madohama jogged up to Issei. His face creased into a frown. Hey, why's everyone so worried? Issei spied Katace over Matsuda's shoulder, biting her lip, and she was hugging herself. The other girls of the kendo club were all trying to console her. You didn't hear, Madohama said. His tone was less jovial than usual. More sad. Hear what? Murayama's gone missing. Murayama could feel the wind brush against her skin, the coldness having woken her. She opened her eyes to find that darkness greeted her. An old light bulb was illuminating a small section of the room and she could spy a skylight above her. It was still night. How long had she been here? Murayama pushed herself off the ground, her joints stiffening with the movement, and she stilled. Someone was sniffling. Murayama wasn't alone. There were other girls like her, some dressed in different school uniforms, all in various states of undress, and she could see their eyes were red and puffy. Where am I? Murayama asked, before flinching backward. One of the girls looked at her with such. There was no other way to describe it other than deadness. The spark of life within her was simply gone. The girl didn't stare at Murayama but passed her, like she was a ghost. You're in hell, the girl said. No, we're not. They'll be coming for us. The police will come. Another girl objected. She didn't have the same hopeless look to her. Murayama was interrupted from her thoughts when the door creaked open and a finely dressed man stepped in with slicked back hair, a short mustache, and a cane. Alongside him came a teen boy with blonde hair, narrowed eyes, and a sneer on his features. Murayama couldn't believe it. It was him, Sato. Did you treat them well? The finely dressed mobster asked. They resisted, but yes, I did treat them well. The sleazy bodyguard said. Good, we cannot damage them in any way. They'll be sent out to one of the clubs in Tokyo. The mobster boss nodded, leaning forward to look at the frightened girls. Father, can I try them? There was dread and a coldness that crept into Murayama's heart when she heard that. She could see Sato looking directly at her. Not yet, you were too rough with the other one. Think of this as disciplining yourself, the mobster boss said, pointing to the girl with the lifeless eyes. They all left one by one with Sato looking at her one last time, and Murayama couldn't help the revulsion she felt. The door clicked shut and one girl sobbed at her fate. Don't give up. We will get out of here. We just need to wait for the right time, Murayama said, bringing an arm around her. She had to be strong. She couldn't let fear set in. She had to be calm. She would escape. Issei made his way outside the building distractedly. He'd told Eika that he would catch up with her and that he had to collect his thoughts. His hands were practically vibrating when he was in class. The thought that Murayama was gone disturbed him. What if it was actually his fault? She was too wounded to go home, and that made her easy pickings. This was beginning to get more troublesome the more he thought. Issei turned around the corner of the building, pausing when he saw a group of boys surrounding someone. He made his way over and saw that there were a crowd of students, a few second years and a whole lot of third years surrounding a first year. She had white hair that was held back by two cat-shaped clips, hazel eyes that conveyed no emotion, and wore the female uniform sans the shoulder cape. He was curious on why they were surrounding her. He thought perhaps to get an autograph from the adorable girl, until the words left the third year's mouth. Come on, just do a little dance for us. Aren't you the school mascot? One of the boys jeered, someone Issei recognized as the snobby type who got here through money rather than hard work. Yeah, do it for Sato-senpai. We've got a treat for you if you do. They all laughed boisterously at that. Issei made his way forward. Hey, what's with all the bullying? Are you trying to compensate for all that ego? Issei drawled, pushing his way to the front. Who the hell? Oh, it's the deadbeat. What are you doing here? Sato sneered at Issei as if the mere sight disgusted him. Here? Oh, this is where I go to study. You know, the academy where I worked hard to get into, unlike someone here. The dig at Sato seemed to have infuriated him, and he walked up to Issei, whispering to him dangerously, What did you say? Oh, isn't it sad for all of you lot to force yourself on someone? Taunting and bullying a girl to do what you say. Now what does that say about you? About all of you? He punctuated it by looking into the eyes of some of the boys. who looked down in shame at his words, and back to Sato. Is it so hard for you to be gentlemen at this school? Is it so difficult to be courteous and polite to a girl now? There were uneasy looks from some of the guys, and he could see the veins on Sato's forehead. Or was it easy for you to be a coward? A fist struck Issei in the face and he was down on the ground, the taste of copper in his mouth. Hitting you, Hyaudu, that was easy. Sato looked pleased with himself and was about to kick him in the stomach when Matsuda tackled Sato from behind, pinning him to the ground. Run, Issei, Matsuda shouted. One of Sato's friends kicked Matsuda in the chin before dragging him off Sato. Motohama came in with a yell but was dogpiled by his other friends. Run, Motohama screamed before he was kicked in the ribs. Issei shot up to his feet, scooping the white-haired girl in his arms. What's your name? Kaneko, she said, but there was concern in her voice, and that was all he needed to drive him forward. Look, I need you to get Kaichu to come down here. I'm gonna go back for my friends. He was about to rush in when Kaneko's hand caught his wrist. Be careful, senpai. Issei nodded, giving her a confident grin in return before she took off. Issei rushed back in, to find Matsuda being beaten badly. Motohama's face was bloody, his glasses cracked. Issei gritted his teeth before plunging into the fray, with a dropkick. He knocked the guy beating on Motohama out. I'll take care of this, Issei said, patting Motohama on the shoulder, who gave him a weak grin in return. Done running, Hyaudu, Sato said, throwing Matsuda at Issei. Issei caught the bloodied Matsuda in his arms. Why'd you come back? Matsuda coughed, blood trailing from his lips. I wasn't gonna leave you behind. Issei gently put him next to Motohama. You're going to regret coming back. Sato scowled at him, waiting for all his friends. Not as much as you are. Issei glared at Sato, the look causing a momentary wave of fear over the boy's face. Issei pulled his bloody shaking hands up and clenched them. Damn, this shaking. They all charged. Issei met them in kind. Fists flew forward. Issei tilted his head just so they grazed him, but what scared them the most was the manic smile that he had. He pulled one of them into a headlock, the sole of his shoe slamming straight into a boy's chin, who went down like a sack of potatoes as his blood flew through the air. He slammed the teen who he had in a headlock to the ground, knocking the wind out of him before his world turned to black courtesy of Issei's fist. Issei staggered forward, ducking down, away from another strike at him aimed to put him down before he returning one in kind, jabbing at the boy's solar plexus. The boy's eyes widened at the pain that he was experiencing, and he clutched his stomach in agony. Issei had the wind knocked out of him, feeling Sato's knee in his stomach. Issei stumbled back, grasping his side. Sato grasped Issei's blazer and was rewarded with 2 fingers in his eyes. Issei tossed the screaming Sato to his friends, all of them crashing into a heap. 2 down. Sato and his friend are out of the way for the moment. The guy I punched is getting back up and the last one is still fresh. Gotta take him down, Issei thought. He eyed each of them before he charged forward with a cry, tackling the Sato's other friend to the ground before nailing him with forearm blows. Issei spat blood once more before feeling a debilitating blow to his side, rolling across the asphalt. He could endure this. He stood again, chuckling as the last 3 guys watched him warily. What are you waiting for? Come on, what is going on here? A frosty voice interrupted as Sona strode forward with Tsubaki by her side and Kaneko was hovering nearby. Nothing, just an argument that got out of hand. Issei spat out a glob of blood before making his way over to Kaneko. Are you okay? He made his way over to Kaneko, who nodded but frowned cutely at seeing his injured state. Yes, thank you, senpai. Despite Kaneko's monotone voice, he could see the gratitude in her eyes. You're welcome, he said with a smile, carefully hiding the fact that his ribs hurt like hell. Now I think I should head to the nurse's office. I really can't see out of my right eye now. He was about to leave when the diminutive president stepped in front of him. Care to explain your side of the events? Like I said, just an argument that my friends and I got dragged into. Sona stared with a stony expression before a rush of air escaped her nostrils. Resigning herself, her violet eyes met Issei's brown ones. Meet me later after school so we can discuss the terms of your punishment, and in future don't get into any more fights. As you wish, Kaichu, he acquiesced, wincing at the pain that flared in his sides again. Issei walked over to Matsuda and Motohama, carrying their bruised forms easily. Did I get him? Motohama murmured, a bit delirious from the pain. Yeah, you got him. Let's get you to the nurse's office. Issei held the bruised boys up and they all held small but victorious grins on their faces. Look what you did now. All the ladies are sure to come after you, protecting our school mascot like a knight in shining armor. Eika couldn't help the chuckle that escaped her. Or a terrifying dragon protecting the princess from unworthy knights. He laid down on the bed as the nurse dabbed at his eye gingerly with care. We helped, Matsuda and Motohama said from the other side of the room. I'm sure you did a wonderful job, Matsuda-chan. Motohama-chan, the nurse said with a bright smile. The boys' cheeks heated up and they bowed their heads. Thank you, Tamamo-sensei. All right, I'm off to take care of some business. Get well soon, Issei. See you two idiots later, Eka said, a cheerful grin on her face when she heard the duo's gnashing teeth. You guys all right? Don't worry about us. Matsuda tried to stifle a yawn but failed, falling asleep into the mattress. Just gonna take a quick nap, Madohama said. Ara, Issei-kun, it isn't enough that I find you sleeping in one of my beds, now you're setting a bad example for others to follow. The nurse had golden eyes with her long blonde hair tied up. She wore an orange turtleneck. That didn't hide her generous bust, rather it showed how stacked she was, and black pants with a white lab coat. This nurse was known to many of the students at Kyo Academy as Tamamo, and her beauty could be called divine, with many speculating her to be on par with the two great ladies themselves. Anything to be under your tender mercies, Tamamo-chan. He hissed in pain as she continued to dab his eye with alcohol before he turned to her. Did you put them under a spell? A healing one. They'll be in a deep sleep and will wake up with a bit of discomfort rather than the bruises they suffer. I can't say the same for you, however, she said with a mischievous grin, one that was not so commonplace on the nurse. Oh, I get it, you're mad that I didn't come to you yesterday. She dabbed harder and he yelped before the kind smile was back in place. Damn it, why do women always like to take pleasure in causing me pain? It's to get it into your very thick skull to stop doing stupid things like telling us not to draw attention. There was a silence as Issei digested the admonishment that he was given from the older woman. He couldn't fault her for that, but it was in his instincts to show off his power. Whether it was in a match against Murayama or the slugfest with Sato and his gang. I saw your handiwork yesterday. You left a big bruise on Murayama, but I healed her enough and told her that you just smacked her hard enough to break your stick and nothing more. And now she's missing, he said wistfully. That ... is a problem. Tamamo finished wiping away the grime and blood of his face to see that his swollen eye had gone down to half its size. She was about to speak again when the door opened with a bang. I heard you got into a fight, Issei. Someone burst through with a cloud of smoke and a flip before crouching on the ground and pointed dramatically at Issei. You should have invited me to the party. Hello to you too, Achilles. Achilles was a teen in the same year as Issei, with flaming red hair and green eyes, wearing the boys' version of the Kyo uniform but with an open blazer. His general appearance reflected the wild image that he projected. He was the captain of Kyo's soccer team and one of the most eccentric people around. Be respectful of the people around you, delinquent. A silver-haired girl walked through the door. An eye patch covered her right eye and the girl's uniform hugged her voluptuous form, with her arms crossed under her BRSDS. She was known infamously for her cold exterior, and was the captain of the music club, Lai Issei. What was that, Cyclops? Achilles said, his left eye twitching at the comment. Achilles, Lai Hua, please don't fight in the infirmary. Tamamo turned towards them with an eerie grin and a sinister look in her eye. Unless you'd like to occupy one of these beds. They responded simultaneously. HMPH, to CH. You could have taken them all down without breaking a sweat, Issei. Don't tell me your skills have already dulled. Lai Hua asked. There are still some people watching, so why not act like a high schooler? Getting into fights with people that I don't like. Trying to get a date with a girl, be average, be normal. Tamamo stopped her ministrations and looked him in the eye. Oh, Issei-kun, you'll never be normal. Look at the people you surround yourself with and look at you. You'll always be the most bravest and kindest man who saved me. Who gave your life for strangers because you couldn't stand watching injustice. You battled powerful men and women with nothing but your wit and your will, and that makes you so much more. Issei didn't know what to say to those words and instead held up his shaking hands. Is there any way you can help me with this? Were your hands shaking in the fight? No, they were fine. It just hurt. A lot. I'm afraid I won't know more about your shakes until I do more. Clinical trials. You mean experiments? Lai Hua said. You're free to join in, Lai Hua. No thanks. Anyway, I called you guys here to help fix a mess. I need to find Murayama. What do you need us to do, boss? Achilles said. We're gonna go hunting. Someone help. 4 girls screamed while a group of thugs dragged them to a white unmarked van. Please someone help us. Shut up and get in the truck. A bald, burly man with an ugly sneer and an equally ugly scar held up a cattle prod. Move. Daisuke, Nabu, Tatsuo, get the product and go. 3 of the men broke off towards the truck. The girls whimpered, tears streaking down, and the man stared them down. The girls screamed again when they saw a shadowy figure hover in the moonlight. What the FCK? The thug muttered before a foot crashed into his chest. The assailant was dressed in a black suit wearing a butterfly mask and faced the approaching thugs. Who the F opened fire? Silvery instruments of death fired loudly across the darkened alleyway, yet the vigilante ducked and weaved before melting back into the shadows. The thugs were shaken at what they were seeing and edged closer to their fallen leader. They couldn't help feel the sensation of a predator watching. A beast in the dark waiting for the opportune moment to strike. A shadow flitted past their vision, grabbing Nabu as he fired his gun wildly. They all took aim at where he was, but it was too late. A whistling sound pierced through the air into Tatsuo's shoulder as he cried in agony at the knife buried there. OFCK, Izumo, help me. the injured man shouted, grasping his shoulder. A chain flew forward around the man's throat and he was dragged into the darkness. Forget this, I'm outta here. Daisuke tossed away his gun and made a break for the exit before a bullet entered his chest and he fell down to the ground. FC King cowered, Izumo growled. The bald man wielded a submachine and pointed wildly at every shadow. The only sounds left was Daisuke's dying groans and the clatter of debris in the alleyway. A wrestle by the dumpster and a hail of bullets flew where it was. Izumo's fingers twitched and his eyes narrowed trying to peer through the darkness, but his frustrations got the better of him. Where are you? Here. A demonic whisper and the gun was ripped out of his hands. Izumo's world spun, landing face first into the ground. The masked vigilante stood over Izumo, planting a foot on the man's shoulder. Turning her head to the frightened girls, the black-suited vigilante shook her head towards the exit. Applying pressure to the thug's shoulder, she whispered low in his ear. Tell me what I want to know before I stop being nice. FCKU, Izumo said, struggling in defiance. That's going to cost you. Izumo tensed up when he didn't feel any pressure on his shoulder. He struggled to his feet before she stomped down on his shoulder with a sickening crack. Izumo wailed and cursed at her. That was your last warning. FCK, what do you want to know? Where are you keeping all the girls? Why do you want to know? I'm a concerned citizen. You think a silly mask and suit is gonna scare me? Her response was to step harder on his shoulder. FCK, stop, I'll talk. Start talking then. They're at a club. Club Con. That's where they're keeping them. Now let me go. She stepped off the thug before he began to chuckle to himself. You won't save them, they're too far gone. I can't wait till they get your sorry ass. She stopped short before turning around, marching up to him and slamming him against the wall. I can see that nothing can get you to change your ways. Izumo shivered when he saw, through the slits of the mask, blood-red eyes glaring at him. So I'm gonna make sure that you won't hurt anyone for a long time. No, please. The man's whimpering were drowned out when she flipped him back on the ground. Did you give the same mercy to those girls you kidnapped? The man couldn't answer, his body locked up in fear and he was frozen staring at blood-red eyes. Up on the rooftop of Issei's apartment, a lone teen sat in what could be described as a small hideout that was filled with a plethora of furniture and a rug. Achilles was seated on a lawn chair reading a shounen manga when he heard the door click open and saw Issei and Tamamo. Sup boss, you're not gonna believe the juicy information that I've got my hands on. Issei noted how Achilles was fidgeting on the spot with a wide grin on his face. You look like you can barely contain yourself. I know, it's that exciting. Oh, this totally feels like the good old days. Achilles, please wait until Lai Hua gets here. You wouldn't want to upset her again by making her miss out on this. Tamamo said. No need. I certainly don't expect Achilles' childishness to evaporate anytime soon. Lai Hua said, jumping on the rooftop. Screw you. Only in your dreams. Those two, always getting on each other's nerves. Tamamo couldn't help but palm her face. Settle down, kids. We got work to do. Issei sat on a recliner and the others situated themselves with Tamamo on a couch, Achilles on his lawn chair and Lai Hua standing to the side. Alright, Lai Hua. Do you have any leads on where we might find Murayama? Better. I tracked down and interrogated some of the thugs that have been hanging around the school lately and every one of them says the girls are most likely being held at Club Con. It's owned by one Kenshiro Bunta. Good, we've got a location. Do we have an inn? Oh yeah, we've definitely got an inn. I talked with some of the other guys and they've heard rumors about an underground fight club being used for recruitment there. The kicker is that Sato's been trying to get some muscle for his dad. So he's trying to impress his father and he's doing that by kidnapping girls and hiring young blood for his gang. Tamamo commented, a thoughtful expression on her face. I doubt that Sato is the one calling the shots, but I think that proving his worth to Bunta is a more reasonable motivation. Issei said, so boss, are we gonna storm the castle, crack some skulls, and bust out the girls? Love the enthusiasm, but we're gonna go for a more subtle approach. We need to strike when they least expect it and to make sure that the lead on the girls are solid. Sweet, so we're doing Fight Club. We're doing Fight Club. Oi, food's here. A guard opened the door but didn't expect a swift punch to his face. Murayama stood over the man, her hand shaking as adrenaline coursed through her. Come on, let's get out of here. Murayama called to the other girls but they shook their heads in fear. Please, don't go. The hopeless girl said. Murayama could see it. There, a spark of concern, of compassion. I have to try and find a way out, for all of our sakes. I don't know what he's done to you and I won't stick around to find out. We're gonna get out of here. You can't fight Sato. He has connections. He's a piece of shit whose teeth I'm gonna kick in, Murayama said, an edge to her voice as she marched out. The girl could only look on before she averted her gaze to the ground. Don't go. Murayama crept along the hallway. Her steps were quiet as she scanned the corners. Finding it empty, she turned and kept moving. But whatever this place was, it felt like a maze. Just doors and long hallways. She opened one door and felt herself freeze in terror when she spotted Sato sitting at a table with dinner in front of him. Murayama, come in, I insist. She was pulled from the hallway by a huge suited man and was seated in front of Sato. Thank you, Sakamoto, leave us. The man bowed silently and left. You know, I think Motohama and Matsuda are right when it comes to the girls of the Kendo Club. You are very beautiful. Murayama glared hatefully at him. Oh, and if you think about trying to escape or hurting me in any way, look to your left. Murayama turned and on a screen saw Kades at a shopping mall, handing out flyers to passerbyers. A handsome man was seated on a bench not far away from here. Suzuki, please turn and wave to the camera. Murayama was shell-shocked as the man waved back not far from Kades. Oh, it's great to see you have good friends like Kades. Such a spirited girl. ... What do you want? Murayama whispered. Sato's chuckle sent shivers down her spine as he grinned, openly staring at her with lust. He finished the rest of his food before standing up from the table and moving towards the couch. As I said, you are growing to become a very beautiful woman. I want to see more, so if you don't mind. Sato sat down, his posture open with a sickening smile. Take off your clothes. Issei and Achilles strolled up a sidewalk in one of the town's busiest districts. The neon light shined, brightly illuminating the night, while various partygoers were milling about, waiting outside clubs and restaurants in fancy dresses. Issei was wearing an unbuttoned, black blazer, the subdued tone of which was in stark contrast to Achilles' more distinct red hoodie. They walked up to the bouncer at the front club, a giant of a man in an expensive suit and a pair of shades. No minors allowed, the bouncer said. His voice sounded like he was gargling gravel. Hey, come on, we're just two guys looking to have a little fun, Achilles said, a massive grin on his face. Buzz off. The bouncer somehow seemed to make his intimidating figure larger, like a cat raising its hair towards a predator. Achilles leaned forward, whispering in the man's ear. We're here for the thing that's happening downstairs. Sato invited us. The bouncer looked them up and down, seemingly sizing them up. You brats look scrawny, but if the boss's son says so. The bouncer stepped to the side, letting them through the door, much to the protest of the other partygoers who were silenced by the big man's imposing glare. The moment the two entered, their senses were assaulted by the blaring music and the flashing laser lights as men and women danced to the beat of the music, gyrating and grinding their bodies against each other in a mix of sweat, desire, and alcohol. Ah, I miss this smell. Achilles stretched his arms out, inhaling the air around him. The smell of booze and sec. UFC King know it. Come on, you horn dog. Seeing another bodyguard next to a door, Issei nodded to the man, who opened it. As they climbed down the stairs, the noise of the club receded only to be replaced by the thunderous roar of a crowd, shouting and cheering as two men were pummeling each other with everything they had. One of the combatants was a tall, imposing man, heavily muscled with numerous tattoos covering his body, while the other smaller yet also muscled man had a scar running down his face. He was losing ground as powerful strikes hammered him, until he was finally put down by a hook to his head. Yamada, 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 the audience chanted, savoring the violence and brutality of the fight. Whoa, look at the big guy. This is getting my blood pumping. Achilles pointed to the tattooed man who lifted his arms up in victory as they dragged the bloodied, scarred man away. How about I take the big guy? Issei said. You always take the big guy. Achilles groaned in annoyance. Well, this is for the mission. And plus I gotta make a good impression. The ghost of a smile was on Issei's lips as he said so. They searched around the underground fight club, hoping to find the noisiest guy, and lo and behold, there he was, perched next to the ring. He was hollering at the audience to bet on the fighters. They walked up to the extravagantly dressed man. Achilles thought he looked like a modern art masterpiece. All right, boys, how much and who are you betting on? The bookie asked. We're here for the recruitment drive. Issei said. On newcomers, huh? Think you got what it takes to beat the big guy behind me? Yamada let out another yell to the crowd. Achilles answered quickly. Oh, my pal here can take a beating. He's willing to do anything to prove his worth. Like this one time. He tried to impress a girl by dousing himself. Issei punched Achilles in the gut before he had the chance to say anything more embarrassing. What my friend is saying is that I can take it and dish it out with the best of them. The bookie looked Issei up and down, considering him for a moment. All right, kid, just last 3 minutes against the guy. If you can't come out of that ring of your own free will, that's on you. The man pulled down his shades and looked at Issei, dead in the eye. Got that? Yeah, I got it. Issei nodded back to him, cracking his neck. Hey Slick, you betting or what? The bookie turned to Achilles. 50,000 yen with my pal knocking him out. The bookie paused robotically, narrowing his eyes at them. That's some big odds, kid. 10 to 1 if he's going against Yamada, especially if it's total knockout. Are you sure you want to make that bet? Achilles answered by handing him a stack of cash. What's your name? The bookie said, turning to Issei. Takamura Kenshiro. Issei replied, the fake name rolling off his tongue with ease. Hey boss. Issei turned around to see Achilles give him a cheeky grin and a thumbs up. Good luck. Issei stepped into the ring, his shirt and blazer gone, He was stripped down to his pants, where a litany of scars marred his back and a particular scar stretched from his left shoulder to his right hip. "They're sending out kids to fight me now." Issei remained silent at Yamada's taunt, his face a blank mask, not showing any emotion as he turned to face him. "You must be really brave or really stupid to step in the ring with me." The announcer came up towards them, hyping the crowd with his presence as he yelled boisterously. "All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is the final fight for the night where we have a newcomer to the ring, TAKAMURAKENSHIRO." The crowd cheered when Issei stepped forward in the middle. "And here on my side of the circle is the monster of the box, the bear of Tanaka Pass and the undefeated champion, AKIMOTO Yamada." Yamada had a smug smirk on his face and lifted his arms in the air, showing off his muscles and hyping up the entire room. The crowd was going crazy. The announcer brought his hand down to begin the match. "I'm gonna enjoy breaking your scrawny ass." Yamada puffed up, settling into a boxing stance. "Hey, boss, your fly's undone," Achilles shouted from the sidelines. Issei didn't see the haymaker from Yamada that sent him stumbling to the side. The crowd oohed at the hit. Issei touched the blood on his lips. "FC King asshole." Issei paid for that remark with Yamada throwing him to the other side of the ring. His body bounced against the carpet. "Aw shit, give a guy some time to stretch before you do that. Stay down, brat." Issei hopped up on his feet, giving his body a few stretches. "Hey big guy, if I wanted to get attacked by kittens, I would have gone to the pet store." Issei doubled over from the man's meaty fist. His back slammed into the barriers from another of Yamada's throws. Issei cracked his legs and shot up to his feet, shaking his whole body. Yamada chuckled. "I love you spirited kids, don't know when to quit." Issei finished the rest of his stretches, settling into a relaxed stance. "I'm gonna blah blah blah, when do you ever stop talking?" Yamada glowered, marching towards Issei with murder in his eyes. The bear-sized man swung his arm forward towards Issei's grinning smile. Crack. Issei had caught the blow with his left hand, his fingers clenched around Yamada's wrist. Issei's right fist shot forwards, the knuckles dug into Yamada's chin. A jaw-shattering uppercut that sent him off his feet and onto his back unconscious. The noise in the room died instantly as Issei stood over Yamada, before turning to the crowd and shrugging as if to say sorry to disappoint. The crowd went ballistic. From an observation room, a man watched the crowd cheer for the kid who had knocked out one of his best fighters. He signaled to the man behind him. "Bring him here, we're going to have a chat." Issei and Achilles were led down a hallway, the lights bathing the entire area with an orange glow. They were flanked by two suited men. Issei watched each of their movements, nodding discreetly to Achilles, who smiled widely. One of the suited men knocked on the door, before it opened to reveal the man that they were here for. Kenshiro Bunta. He was sitting in an armchair. The stench of a cigar wafted through the air and he was looking at the newspaper. "Damn, this place probably costs more than my apartment." Achilles gawked in awe at the room. "So you're the one that knocked out my prized fighter," Bunta said, setting aside the newspaper. "You've certainly garnered my interest, enough to get me away from the paper." "Crossword," Issei said. The room was well lavished with a liquor cabinet, a leather sofa on the side and a desk with an armchair. "Sudoku." Bunta reached into his liquor cabinet for sake before deciding to go for the bottle of water next to it. "And who is your friend next to you?" "I'm his manager," Achilles said. He puffed his chest out in pride. He knew how to play the part well. Didn't know kids these days had managers. Bunta scoffed, sitting back down. "We grew up in a very rough neighborhood," Achilles defended. "Well, I hope you don't mind if I speak to your friend in private." The suited men ushered Achilles out before he could get another word in, leaving Issei and Bunta alone in the room. "Sit down, boy. Tell me about yourself." Issei almost bristled at being called boy but chose to sit on the offered sofa. "There's not really much to tell. I'm just someone who's looking to make some money." Bunta scratched at his stubble beard, considering the answer for a few moments. There was an air of tension as the silence stretched. "I've been building this organization since I was a young man. It has grown across Kyoto itself. I've countless men in my organization, young men who are willing to give everything for it. What can you offer that makes you better than any of them? Those jokers don't have the same guts that I do." Pretty words, but can you back them up? "Yes," Issei said firmly. "Come with me then." The masked woman prowled along the rooftop of a warehouse, crouching low as a mob thug walked underneath. Shadows wrapped around the woman like a cloak when she moved. She climbed through an open skylight and landed on her feet. A gasp. She whipped her head towards the noise and saw them. They were clustered together like frightened sheep. The woman brought a finger up to where her lips would be. A girl perked her head up when she saw the masked woman. The suited vigilante stepped towards the iron door and tapped it lightly. Her eyes flashed red and the door clicked open. "Don't move. I'll be back," she said kindly. Everyone complied except one, a girl whose eyes filled with a new emotion. A darker emotion. The woman sniffed the air twice before shooting down the hallway. She weaved swiftly through each passageway, She hugged the wall when she heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Someone's been taking out our guys. Boss man wants us to be careful, a thug said, scratching at his neck. His partner replied, who's suicidal enough to take us on? Some noble idiot, I reckon. The thug's voice echoed before disappearing down the corridor. The masked woman dashed off from her spot and allowed herself a victorious smile. She soon slowed to a stop before a door. She could smell it, even from where she was standing. A mixture of blood and lust. She felt disgust well up inside when her body began to react to it. She calmed herself and focused on the mission. She opened the door and there in the middle of an empty room laid Miriama, the moon shining down on her. The masked woman felt dread and heat rise in her chest. Hatred seemed to flow through her veins at the sight of her unbuttoned shirt and torn skirt. She could hear Miriama's whimpers. Please ... and no ... stop. Her heart broke at hearing her voice. She sounded weak, defeated. A slow clap began to echo throughout the room, and the masked vigilante eyes focused on Sato as he emerged from the shadows behind Miriama. Well, it looks like we've found our mysterious vigilante. I'm so glad that you invited yourself to this little getaway. You are becoming somewhat of a nuisance. Sato sneered before he adopted a lecherous grin. Why, thank you. How about you come a little closer and say that? The masked woman's words were laced with venom. I think this is close enough, Sato said, indicating the space between them with his index finger. You know, I was wondering why someone would go to such lengths to beat up my guys. Imagine my surprise when I found out you were looking for her. Sato stepped closer as a dozen men moved from the shadows, all of their guns trained on her. The masked woman put her hands up. She had nowhere to go but back. But Miriama was right there. She was so close. She cursed at herself. There, that's a good girl, Sato said, mocking her with a laugh. Sato-san, we got Buntasama coming in with a guest. A man whispered in Sato's ear. Oh ho, this is great. Father will be pleased with what I have to show him. Sona sat at her desk, a mountain of paperwork beside her as she massaged her head. She took her glasses off, rubbing her eyes. Her headache was compounded by the fact that she had to deal with the incident between Sato and Issei. No matter how much denial was given by both sides, there was obvious bad blood between the two. She hadn't realized that it would escalate to the point of violence. And in the academy no less. Sato had definitely painted a target on his back. Sona could recall the conversation between herself and Issei, one that gave her more questions than answers. Sekurite, that a new Kamen rider. Issei scratched his head, chuckling all the while. Sona remained stone-faced. It was a joke. I'm not laughing. Come on, Kaichu, lighten up a bit. There is a serious concern when a Longinus user is here. I have no idea what your motivations or intentions are, so forgive me that I don't agree when you say I should lighten up. Issei's shoulders sagged at her clipped tone. The good cheer evaporated from his face and he adopted an intense gaze. Issei's smoldering eyes bored right into Sona's. You should relax, or someone might drop dead from all this tension. Sona involuntarily gulped at hearing the threat from Issei, but she squashed that fear and locked eyes with him. And who might that be? Sona asked. Issei's eyes burned as he said, me. Sona paused, her brain short-circuiting as she processed the word before righteous indignation overpowered years of ingrained polite mannerisms. What kind of response is that? Issei howled with laughter to the skies, doubling over as he clutched his stomach. His eyes burned with tears at having fooled Sona into breaking her composure. Oh, that was. You should have seen the look on your face. Priceless. Hayao-san, please get back to the topic at hand. Sona's face flushed as Issei ignored her in favor of rolling on the ground. She wondered if he could die from lack of oxygen right now. She'd definitely feel a lot better if he did. Sorry, it was too hard not to pass up. Issei leaned back on the bridge, an easygoing grin back in place. Sona liked that expression a lot more than his previous one. To answer your question, it's really hard to say, I am the Sekurite and I am not. What do you mean? It's complicated. She repressed the urge to growl at his vague answer but pressed on. Of course it is. Then can you tell me why you are here at the very least? I'm taking a break. A break? Yep, Issei said, popping the pea. I mean, can't a guy catch a break once in a while? A man's gotta get his R&R. Sona mulled over his words. Everything that she thought she knew about Issei was quickly needing to be reevaluated. He definitely wasn't what he was pretending to be. The slothful boy that had no energy to do anything. There was something more genuine about him. Like Sona was seeing who he really was. You know, Kaichu, Issei said. He shifted on his feet, walking up to her. It's kind of strange for you to interrogate me. Are you sure you don't have any ulterior motives? I'm doing my duty to safeguard this town and its inhabitants. Issei shook his head at her answer. If you don't want to tell the truth, you could have said so. I am telling the truth, she said, reinforcing her words. Issei waved her away, and a spike of annoyance rose in Sona at being dismissed. Never mind, Kaichu. Have a safe trip home. And right there, the real Issei was gone and the ghost she saw every day was walking in his place. Sona returned to her paperwork, hoping that wherever Issei was, he'd stay out of trouble. For his sake, Issei sat in an SUV with Bunta, the man looking him up and down for a second. Issei had played this game before. The intimidation, the looks, he wasn't sure if the guy was trying to size him up or ask him out. "Where's Achilles?" Issei asked. He wasn't worried for Achilles but more about the property damage that would occur if he was left to his own devices. Issei had faith that his friend would be all right by himself. "He's back at my club. I'm sure he's having a good time. My men will treat him well." Issei stayed silent, reading the micro-expressions on the man's face. He knew the truth, but there was nothing more that needed to be said between them. "I'll be frank with you." Apparently there was more was needed to be said. "I need someone like you in my organization. You're tough, you can clearly take a punch, and the way you knocked out my fighter ... very impressive. I can give you whatever you want. Money, power, women, all yours, if you serve under me." Issei's response was crisp. Of course. A chill went up Issei's spine when they passed the gated fence. There was an ominous aura around the warehouse. His skin crawled as they got closer to it. The car slowed to a stop. "Bunta-sama, your son is waiting for you inside." Bunta nodded to the guard before they walked inside. Issei stepped out from the car, following behind them. As Issei walked past the threshold, he noticed there was nothing but concrete walls lit up by fluorescent green light, and along each wall was an iron door. He didn't have to guess what was in them, and he grimaced with each step. There was a sharp stab of pain in the back of his mind. A part of him howled. It wanted justice. They were led into a room where a black-suited woman was standing at the far end, and right in the middle was Murayama. The howling was deafening. It roared, screamed, and shouted, "Destroy them, murder them." He squashed that voice and breathed in, out. "Father, I've caught them. The one who's been giving us trouble." Issei's face blanked when he heard that voice. "Good work, son." Yes, this will do nicely." Sato preened at the compliment. He signaled for Issei to come closer, and the smile slipped off of Sato's face. "What is he doing here?" "You know, Kenshiro," Bunta said. Sato's shocked features morphed into a dark chuckle as he strutted up to Issei. "Oh, do I know him?" "Yes, I do know Hayato Issei very well." Bunta's eyes narrowed, his features grim as he looked back and forth between the two. "What is the meaning of this?" "It means, father, that you've been duped. He's probably a mole for the cops." Bunta's face was stony and he signaled to his men. Issei was grabbed from behind and shoved to where the black-suited intruder was. "Well, this looks like a good spot," Issei said, raising his hands in surrender. "Don't you think? We're about to get shot by the Yakuza and you're asking if this is a good spot to die." The masked woman hissed, a note of desperation in her voice. Murayama's eyes fluttered, looking up to see Issei and a masked woman with their hands up. Issei's face softened when he saw her eyes. Pleading, confused, scared. "This is touching, isn't it?" Sato said, his hand sliding across Murayama's face as if to say that he owned her. A final goodbye to each other. "Say it's going to be all right. Go on, lie to her." Issei's eyes darkened and he saw it, the terror that was settling in Murayama. What she went through, what she was about to see. Issei's eyes were kind and in a calm voice said, "Everything's going to be all right. Close your eyes." All of the henchmen lined up, ready to gun down Issei and the woman next to him. "And Sato, I never lie." Bang! There was silence as one of the henchmen slumped over dead. The others peered closer to see a hole where his eye socket used to be. Thunderous cracks sounded out one by one before half of Bunta's men fell. There was a crash as a skull-faced woman in an armored suit descended from above. Shards of glass fell before her foot crashed into a man's skull. All the remaining men aimed their guns at her. She stood, cracking her neck. "Glad to see you, Spectre," Issei said. Bunta tapped his cane on the ground, barking at his men. "Kill them." All the men fired at her as she ducked to her right and brought out her own instrument of death. The barrel pointed at Bunta. He blinked. Spectre didn't. A shot went off and he fell to the ground. Blood leaked from the hole in his head. "Father," Sato screamed. There was a thundering rattle as a cacophony of guns rang out. Click, 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 before they could reload their guns. They were all struck by daggers, either in the legs or arms. Issei roared, charging forward with a gut-busting punch into a thug as the masked vigilante dived forward with a flying dropkick. The Yakuza pulled out their knives and charged. Issei cursed, leaning back from a knife thrust. His hand pulled the thug's wrist forward and he shoved the knife through the man's neck. The masked woman kicked him away, before she used Issei's back as a springboard and delivered an axe kick to another thug, downing him in an instant. Spectre entered the fray, fist clenched, and struck a man in the throat. She tore the knife out of his arm and the metal slipped between his ribs. "Enough," Sato screamed. He had a knife in one hand and Murayama's throat in the other. "Drop your weapons before they gets it. Sato, if you kill her now, what's gonna stop me from slowly disemboweling you?" Issei said. Sato felt it again. That wave of fear as he looked into Issei's eyes and knew that he was telling the truth. And he hated it. He hated how he was afraid of him. This nobody. This worm. But isn't she who you came for? I kill her now, her death will be on your conscience. What are you going to do, hero? Sato spat out. Master Sato. A voice called out. They turned to see a girl. Her unkempt shirt revealed her bare BRSDS and she wore a pair of soiled panties. Murayama recognized her instantly. The girl that was with her in the room. What are you doing here, Asagi? Sato hissed at the girl. Let me please you, master, Asagi said, her tone dead as she tried to reach for Sato's pants. She was violently backhanded away from him. Always the slave, aren't you, Asagi? Now, be a good girl and stay quiet. Your master has to take care of this pest. Sato focused his attention back on Issei. You see, Issei, this is what I hold. Power. The power to do anything I want. The power to end her miserable life with my hands. Asagi got up to her knees and tried to reach for his belt. See, she's so well trained. Sato let out a laugh that rapidly turned into a scream. Asagi's hand was gripped around a shard of glass, blood spilling from her hands as she plunged it into his groin. There was shocked silence as they watched Asagi rip out the shard. Sato staggered back. He stumbled, watching his guts spill all over the floor. Asagi wasn't finished. She climbed on top of him, stabbing the glass into his chest. Over and over again. Sato choked, gasping for breath, and Asagi pulled the shard out for the last time, blood showering the both of them. Asagi looked at all of them with a deranged smile and she lifted the shard. Her eyes flicked to Murayama. Join me in liberty. Stop. Don't do it, Issei yelled, running towards her. Issei's hand was outstretched to stop her, before Asagi plunged the glass into her own heart. There was shocked silence as Asagi slumped over dead, a content smile on her face. Murayama crawled back and cried at the violent death of Asagi. Issei took off his blazer, wrapping it around her, and she cried into his chest. Sato's words echoed through Issei's mind and he cursed himself. He was too late. What good was a hero who couldn't save anyone? Murayama laid in bed, her eyes firmly fixed on the ceiling. Why was she awake? Why couldn't she forget what had happened? She thought that she had moved on from it. But maybe she was fooling herself. A chill quickly ran through her body as she realized something was in the room with her. SCRRR. Panic set in and her eyes roamed around the room wildly, trying to find the source of the sound. Run, get out. She had to escape, but it was as if she was a passenger in her own body and somebody else was driving it. She struggled in vain, trying to do anything. To move, to get away. In the corner of her room, a formless pool of black mass writhed and squirmed. Her eyes widened and dilated as the thing swayed back and forth in the corner. A lance of fear struck her heart and her instinct screamed at her to run. The writhing mass took shape, and standing before her alive and well was Sato. His body was grotesquely distorted, arms snapped and twisting in the wrong direction. Blood painted his torso crimson. He was only garbed in his underwear, but the lecherous grin was what frightened her the most. He lurched forward. Stop, stay back. For a moment, nothing happened until Sato took another step. Murayama flung her body out of her bed in a desperate attempt to escape him. Wake up, this isn't real. Wake up, wake up. Come back, Murayama. I didn't get a chance to break you yet. Sato vomited black ooze onto the floor and Asagi formed out of the puddle, lifeless on the ground. The glass shard embedded in her chest. Her voice came out raspy, but she could hear every word clearly. Join us. No. She rejected their words, each of hers an octave higher than the last. Sato stalked closer, cackling madly. You're all alone, it's just us now. Murayama clawed at the ground, her surroundings changing to the warehouse, to that godforsaken room. Help me, someone help. Sato grabbed a fistful of her hair and dragged her face to face. No one is coming. I will always be with you. You will never forget me. Sato laughed. Murayama shut her eyes and threw a fist forward with all her might, and the monster shattered. Murayama shot up in her bed, pain lancing through her hand. Her clothes were drenched in sweat, her chest heaving from the nightmare. She stared at her broken alarm clock on the floor. She wasn't aware of the footsteps nor the fact that her mother had barged in. She wasn't aware of the arms that encircled her in a hug. All she could say was, I'm fine. She got up that morning, absent-mindedly going through her daily ritual of showering, eating and walking with her friends to school. Cadace was glued to her side, glaring at any boy who had even looked in their general direction. Her feet carried her to the front of the school gate. The nightmare still followed her. Her haunted outlook reflected that. Everyone was looking at her with pitying glances and thin-liveiled whispers. They thought she was weak. She had worked hard to perfect herself in the way of the sword, and all of that meant nothing when Sato had defiled her. She was powerless to stop him. Cadace grew angry at seeing how downtrodden her friend was and shouted at the people around them to mind their own business. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a trio of people coming. Madohama and Matsuda were laughing boisterously, their arms going up and down in excitement before Matsuda winced. In the middle was Issei. The ever-aloof boy had a sly grin and Madohama reacted to his comment as if he was thunderstruck. Issei looked up to see that Murayama was staring at him. Murayama didn't know what to do or say. A myriad of emotions flooded her. It was overwhelming that she thought she was suffocating. It was too much. She ran. I'm fine, I'm fine. She kept telling herself that over and over. Eika was a normal girl. She liked to think that she did what normal girls do every day. She obsessed over all things lewd, liked eating steak, and generally gave tips to her fellow classmates about skinship. You know, normal things. So she was surprised when she felt someone crash into her and they tumbled across the floor. Eika looked up to Murayama's face, filled with distress. She was panting and soaked with sweat. One droplet fell in Eika's mouth. I'm so sorry, Murayama said, trying to help her up, and lost her grip on her as Eika dropped to a knee. Just a bit of vertigo, Murayama-san. You sure know how to sweep a girl off her feet, Eika said, trying to lighten the mood. She grimaced when the sensation grew stronger. Sona and her vice president, Tsubaki, rounded the corner and blinked as they took in the situation before them. Murayama-san, Kuryu-san, are you both all right? Sona asked, quickly jogging over to them and helping Eika to her feet. Thanks, Kaichu, I'm just feeling a bit under the weather, Eika said with a strained smile. Sona looked at her shaking legs and how profusely she was sweating, raising an eyebrow. Perhaps you should see Tamama-san. Eika opened her mouth to protest, but another wave of nausea hit her. I think that's a good idea, press. Very well. Tsubaki-san, please escort them both to the nurse's office. Tsubaki nodded and they followed her, Eika leaning heavily on Murayama as they left. Sona turned around to see Issei watching from a distance and took a deep breath. Somehow she knew Issei was involved, so she did her duty and tried to get to the bottom of it. Sona entered the student council room with Issei. They were met with faces of confusion as they saw the school deadbeat walk in with their president. She dismissed the people working there and they followed her command, each member of the council picking up their bags and leaving one by one until it was just the two of them. Sona sat down by the table and motioned for Issei to take the seat across from her. Sona's calculating gaze scrutinized his every move, and Issei was eerily reminded of his own mentor. So, nice weather we're having, huh? Sona didn't laugh and her glare hardened. Issei, I'm only going to say this once because my patience has, and follow me on this one, run out. The tension that was hanging in the air was amped up. For Issei, being pinned under a glare from the diminutive president, it was terrifying, and that excited him. He wondered if she'd look into that. I have tried giving you and Murayama some space for the past week. I understand what Murayama went through was traumatic and I've respected her wishes, but that is not working. Issei was ready to protest, but Sona shuts him down with a finger. She has been progressively getting worse and somehow you are involved in this. All I understand right now is that a major criminal organization was systematically taken down in the past week. Girls that were missing have been conveniently found by the police, and the bodies of Sato and his father were found in a sex trafficking warehouse. Issei stayed silent in his seat as he watched Sona lay out everything on the table. Issei breathed out, scratching the back of his head. Look, Kaichu, I had it under control. This isn't a concern for the devils. Issei was interrupted by Sona slamming her hands on the desk, her eyes pinning him with a frosty glare. Not a concern. I may be a devil, but unless you've forgotten, I'm also the student council president, and I don't care what you or anyone else say. There are two students who are obviously dealing with issues out of their control, and She let out a breath before sitting back and kneading her head. I'm trying to help. Silence descended upon the room, with Sona's temper winding down and Issei mulling over what to do. He was suspicious of her motivations, but right now in front of him was someone who cared very much for the people she tried to help and guide. There was a fire in her eyes, something that he didn't see in the normally calm and collected girl. He smiled. She was exactly like him. Tell me, heiress of the Citri clan, what is your goal? He asked. The authority in his voice was clear. Sona blinked. Issei's ghost was gone and the real one was sitting before her. His posture had changed from the relaxed delinquent to one who held the poise and grace of a ruler, and she felt compelled to answer him. I want to open up a school for all devils to learn about raiding games, no matter what class they are. She blurted out without realizing it. So your goal is to be an educator? Issei said, slowly with a raised eyebrow. Sona closed her eyes in resignation. She expected that people would doubt her. Is that surprising? No, I think it's a very admirable goal. Issei's mind flashed to the training that he went through his own mentor. The man's kindness, his knowledge, his infinite wisdom, and the same fire that he saw in him that he could see in Sona. He'd make a fine teacher one day and a great headmistress. Sona's cheeks heated up at the compliment. He proved her wrong again. She couldn't help the smile that stretched across her lips. You should do that more often, Kaichu, Issei said, hand in his cheek, a sly grin stretching across his face. Sona blinked. Do what? Smile. I like it when you smile. You must be imagining things. Issei chuckled at her joke and he sighed, putting a hand to his head. All right then, Kaichu, Issei said, smile dropping. I'll tell you what happened a week ago. Eika was back in the nurse's office. White, so much white. It was too clean, too boring. A thought occurred that white was somehow a cruel and unusual form of torture. It was so bland. It was a void of nothing that just made the mind wander on and on. Nothing to entertain her, and that turned her attention to existential crap. She instead chose to focus on the busty nurse. Tamamo was scribbling something on her clipboard and casted glances at Murayama every now and then. Murayama fidgeted nervously in her seat, finding her hands were suddenly a lot more interesting. Tamamo glanced at her clipboard one last time before her golden eyes focused on Murayama. If you are experiencing any of these symptoms, please contact me immediately. Murayama nodded along. Of course, Tamamo-san, but will you excuse me? I just need to get some fresh air. Tamamo's face was inscrutable and nodded towards the door. Murayama bowed and left, leaving Tamamo and Eiko alone. Tamamo spun around in her chair and slid across the floor, next to Eika. How are you feeling? Like crap. Instead of admonishment, she heard laughter from Tamamo. I bet you do. Now, tell me, when did this feeling start? Around when Murayama bumped into me. Tamamo scribbles more in her clipboard. Have you changed your diet recently? No, not that I could think of. Eika answered with a bit of hesitation. Tamamo eyed her for a second. Are you experiencing any headaches now? It feels like a jackhammer is trying to drive itself into my head right now. How about nausea? Eika's stomach did another lurch and she felt the bile burn her throat, but it settled back down. Yes, definitely yes. You are sweating quite profusely. Tamamo commented absent-mindedly as she took in the remarkable sheen of sweat on Eika's arm. Tamamo pulled out a stethoscope from a drawer. Try and relax for this part. Eika felt the cold instrument on her chest. It hovered over her heart for more than a moment. Tamamo's demeanor changed to something Eika couldn't identify. Tamamo pulled the stethoscope away. She didn't move from her spot, but her eyes are trailing Eika's body before they narrowed. Eika can feel herself squirming, and she tried to stop herself before a calming sensation washes over her. Wait here. I'll be right back. Eika was left to her own thoughts. Okay, no biggie. I can get through this. Maybe. I overworked myself over the past week and I've gotten a little tired. Great. Mother isn't going to be happy about me visiting the nurse's office. Maybe I can sneak. Tamamo returned, opening the door, and what she had in her hand made Eika's heart stop. Drink this. Eika shook her head at the blood pack in the doctor's hand. All thoughts of escape was blaring through her mind. How did she know? Tamamo's eyebrows creased, showing her displeasure. Drink it now or you'll die. I don't know what's in. This blood is from a safe person. You're not going to contract anything from them. Now, drink. Eika took the pack with shaking hands. She brought it closer to her mouth and her two fangs pierced it. Tamamo sat back at her desk. Good grief, if I didn't know any better, it looked like you were going through hypovolemic shock there. Eika placed the dry blood pack down and she stood up from the bed. Her posture was straighter. She was getting into her fighting stance and her eyes flashed from hazel to red. How did you know? Tamamo turned her head back to Eika, a sweet smile on her face, and she pointed towards the bed. Sit down before you hurt yourself. Eika could feel the killing intent come from the nurse. Her heart hammered away at her chest before the pressure did appear with Tamamo's sigh. If you must know, I am also a yokai. 2 fox ears emerged from the top of Tamamo's head. Finding out that you were a vampire wasn't that hard. Your heartbeat was too abnormal. The sweat and nausea contributed to the fact that your body was working overtime with very little blood. Also, you need to learn how to hide your scent better. Eika's face flushed at being quickly dressed down by the older yokai. Were you also the masked vigilante, too? How did she know? Eika screamed internally and externally. She was sweating bullets. Tamamo smirked. You're very easy to read. Tell me, when you bumped into Murayama, did you ingest anything from her? Tamamo asked, professionalism back in place as she continued her diagnosis. Well, some of her sweat did get in my mouth, and you started getting sick. But I don't understand. I'm a hybrid. It shouldn't affect me that much. A hybrid. I'm a half vampire, half succubus. Oh no. A look of realization dawned on Tamamo before shifting to one of horror. Oh no. Murayama walked listlessly through the hallways of her school. The feelings from that morning had receded. What had happened to her? Why did she run? Why Issei of all people? He rescued her, after all. So why? She punched the wall in frustration. The pain shot through her arm and it made her feel alive again. Something she could focus on. She knew why. She was weak. Her legs carried her up the stairs. Weak, pathetic, useless. Her eyes dulled with each thought and the shadow in the back of her mind grew. It laughed. Murayama opened the door to the roof. Perhaps she should end it all. Who needed someone as worthless as her? Can anyone please tell me the figure in Go's tragic play farce that tricked the titular character? Issei sat in his desk, watching the other students try to come up with the answer when he paused. This feeling, he felt it before. He felt it when he was approaching. Issei shot out of his seat, much to the teacher's indignation, and rocketed out of the classroom. Issei's mind was running a mile a minute, racing through the hallways. Memories of Murayama's tear-stricken face flooded his mind. Memories of a terrified girl who saw someone die in front of her. Join me in liberty. She wanted to escape. She wanted the pain to end. What are you going to do, hero? Sato shouted. In the end, you couldn't save her. Cao whispered in his ear. All he could do was defy that notion. He could do something. He could save her. He will save her. Issei's frantic footsteps echoed as he climbed each mountainous step, adrenaline running through him as he prayed that Murayama hadn't jumped yet. The door was in sight and he barged through with his shoulder. Murayama turned, startled by the noise. When she saw Issei, all the feelings of dread, of anger, of confusion flooded her again. Hey, Murayama, fancy meeting you here. Issei gasped, taking in deep gulps of air. Do you think you have time for a cha? Murayama shut her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Issei was startlingly reminded that the strong warrior that he faced before was a frightened girl, someone who was lost and confused, someone who wanted the pain to end. He reached out to her, to pull her back away from that edge. Stay back. Issei stopped short in his next step. Stay back or I'll jump. I don't want your pity, Issei. All right. I'll stand right here. Let's just talk, all right? Do you want to talk? Issei said, raising his hands to placate her. Murayama didn't say anything to him. Her eyes were still distraught and she stared into his. Issei, if you want me to talk then make me this promise. Murayama sniffed, rubbing her eyes with her sleeve. Promise me that you won't take me down by force and ... and that if I were to jump, you won't stop me. Issei's face ashened when he heard those words. How could he possibly make that kind of promise, knowing that he willingly let Murayama die of her own free will, and that he had the power to stop it? I promise that I won't stop you or take you against your will. So let's just talk, okay? Murayama nodded. Issei stood a few feet before Murayama, waiting patiently as Murayama tried to get her breathing under control. After everything that happened with Sato and Asagi, I thought everything would go back to normal. But, she said, trailing off, nothing was the same. Issei finished for her, and he was sorely reminded of a young boy who failed to save his own friend. Off eyes, a young brown-haired boy cried, banging his head against a giant iron gate. Tears ran down the boy's cheek mixing with the blood on his fists. A man covered in golden fur tried to pull him back away. Stop it, young Issei. I need to save her, he screamed, charging at the gate. The man took hold of the boy's arms. You'll die. Stop this foolishness. I don't care. She's waiting for me. I have to save her, he screamed back. Murayama stared at Issei, sorrow in his eyes, and she knew that he held the same pain. I thought that I could deal with it. But the rumors, the constant whispers, the voices, the pitying looks. I was the captain of the kendo, and everyone treated me like I was made of glass. I'm sorry, but that's not true. You are strong, Murayama. Issei took a step forward. You have to believe it. Murayama giggled for a second and laughed. No, I'm not. Did I tell you what Sato did to me? I let him rape me because if I didn't then Kades would have been. She let the statement hang in the air. Issei blinked, connecting the dots. He really wished that he'd had his chance to exact retribution on Sato. He cursed, damn you, Sato. It's not fair. None of this is fair, she said. Issei could see how broken Murayama was and how she held it together at that point amazed him. I know ... it is what it is. They stood in silence, the wind rustling through their clothes. Dark clouds gathered, blocking out the sun, and the sky was sea of gray. A droplet fell from the sky, followed by another, and soon both of them were showered by rain. Murayama could see Issei still standing where he was, resolute in staying the rain with her. You should go, Issei. You'll catch a cold. So, he said, I'm not gonna leave you. I don't want to see you splattered on the ground. And I'm sure everyone else won't want to see their favorite kendo captain like that, do you? Yes, no, I don't know anymore. I don't know what to do. Murayama hugged herself, sobbing. Can I tell you a story? Murayama sniffed and nodded at him. There was a boy, many years ago, who grew up in a place where life was hard and he was alone. But he made a friend, someone who kept him company, someone who he could live and learn to laugh with. He loved that friend dearly, Issei said with a fond smile at the memory. One day, she was taken away from him. He tried to get her back, but the people he thought he could trust had betrayed him. He thought he had lost everything and that he couldn't go on, but a wise old man told him something. What was it? You're not alone in the world. No one is. Your friends, the people who are out there, are waiting for you. Happiness is waiting for you. All you have to do is take that first step. Issei recited. If you don't believe that, then step into the air. But if you do, will you take my hand and find out? Murayama turned from Issei, facing forward towards the ground, to her oblivion, and she turned to Issei, who still stood there with his hand reaching out for her. She stepped forward. I'm so scared, Murayama cried, wrapping her arms around Issei. The dread, the despair that she felt, the blackness that she thought would engulf her at any moment vanished. I know. You're all right. You're safe now. For Issei, saving Murayama that day, saving one person was enough for him. Rainier was nervous. No, she wasn't nervous but excited. She was personally called to Azazel's office. She couldn't contain her excitement. She was practically vibrating when stood before the double doors and knocked on it. Come in. Rainier marched in and stood before Azazel himself. He was currently hunched over his desk, his golden bangs covering his face as he scribbled in his notebook. This continued for 5 minutes. Rainer's patience was running thin and she coughed into her mouth. Azazel-sama. Oh, sorry. Rainer-chan, right, Azazel said, pointing an endearing smile at her. Just like that, her irritation vanished and she nodded with a small smile. Azazel stood from his desk and moved closer to Rainer. The reason why I called you here is that I need you to observe a particular sacred gear user. Just observe, sir? She asked curiously. Rainer couldn't help but be a little disappointed at being assigned such a menial task. She was taken aback by the loud guffaw that erupted from Azazel's lips. Don't worry, this kid you're going to be observing will be much more interesting than what you take him for. His name is Issei Hayadu. He lives in Kyo Town. Just monitor him, see if he's shown any signs of awakening his sacred gear. Will that be all, sir? Rainer said. Azazel flashed her another charming smile before he nodded. Prep a team for this mission. Rainer blinked in shock. Is that really necessary, Azazel-sama? If my reports are right, then there are a few wild cards out there that may get the wrong idea. Your team is there to provide backup in the case that you run into something that you can't handle. Rainer's heart broke a little. Did Azazel not believe in her? Trust me, if you do come across any of these people, run. I understand, sir. Rainer gulped after hearing his voice drop, and his aura intensify at the last word. Very good, that'll be all. Take care now, Azazel said with a grin. As Rainer walked back, her mind getting ready for the mission ahead, she stopped short before a man who appeared before her. He had sharp pointed ears and red eyes with long black hair reaching past his neck. She knew this man as Cockabeel. Rainer, Cockabeel said. She could hear it, the disdain and contempt that he had for her. She gritted her teeth and put the mask back on. Leave emotion at the door. That's what she learned. Cockabeel-sama. HMPH, Azazel's given you a mission, has he? Rainer nodded robotically to his question. Then let me add something more to this mission. Cockabeel stood in front of her. Where Rainer felt safe and comfort in Azazel's presence, she felt fear, anger, and hatred towards this man. If you find any sacred gear users, you must eliminate them. We cannot have the enemy using potential weapons against us. If Azazel finds out she was interrupted by a backhand, fury flashed across Cockabeel's features. Never interrupt me, do you understand? Rainer only nodded, her eyes shooting venom, but she stayed her tongue. What you will do is that you will extract the sacred gears from them and bring it back here. Azazel will get to research his new toys and no one gets to have their weapons. Is that understood? Yes. Cockabeel merely raised an eyebrow and waited. Yes, Cockabeel-sama. Good girl, now leave. Rainer's legs couldn't carry her fast enough and thoughts of killing the man drove her on, but she would wait. She'd done it all her life, she could do it for just a little longer. Sona wasn't really prepared for today. On some level, she knew that Issei would surprise her in some fashion or another, but this time, he took her expectations and destroyed it. Sona was conflicted. He had made her promise not to tell anyone else of what he had done. He had used her words against her. The word of a student council president. What could she possibly tell Riaz that could reassure her? Her thoughts were interrupted as Riaz came through the door. Speak of the devil, she thought. Sona, good to see you. Riaz sat down on the couch, setting up the chessboard between them. I heard about Murayama's kidnapping. Likewise, Riaz, and it's been taken care of. Issei has seen to that problem. Thoroughly, Riaz's interest piqued at the mention of Issei. It's fortunate that Issei came to the rescue. I've no doubt that he is the one now. Yes, it was. Fortunate, Sona said. Indeed, it was fortunate for Murayama when Issei found her. Everybody else that was involved in the kidnapping didn't quite share the same luck. Have you found anything about Issei that would be of advantage to me? Sona mulled over the words in her mind and what Issei had made her promise. Riaz, Issei is a lot more complicated than you might think. Riaz paused and considered her childhood friend's words. She moved her pawn first. What do you mean by that? The individual that you're planning to recruit is not someone new that should be trifled with. Did you know that up until today, there used to be a criminal organization here? Sona moved her own piece. Yes, and Sona wanted to very clearly tell her to give up on her endeavors. But Sona knew that if Riaz set her sights on something, then she would stop at nothing to get it. Now, there isn't, as in all traces of it are gone. A person who is so thorough and ruthless to dismantle and completely wipe out something like that in a matter of days is something you shouldn't take lightly. They continued to play the game in silence, Riaz mulling over Sona's words and Sona hoping that Riaz would take the hint. If he's that impressive, then that's more reason to recruit him, Sona shouted, no longer concentrated on the chessboard anymore. Damn it, Riaz. Listen, this isn't a game. Don't you think I know that? Riaz said. Her eyes met Sona's and neither backed down from each other. I've tried to come up with everything to escape my contract. He is my last hope. He, a human being without using any magical means, took down the Yakuza. Do you know how frightening it would be if he decided to set his sights on you? He'll be reasonable. He has needs, he has wants and desires. Sona chuckled mirthlessly at what Riaz said. She was foolish in believing that Riaz had the power to give Issei what he truly wanted. So did Bunta, and look at him. Sona closed her eyes and sat back down, her voice calm and accepting. Very well, I did warn you. Just ... be careful. He can be a great ally or your worst enemy. Damn the consequences. I won't subject myself to being Riser's trophy wife. A blonde girl in nun's habit sat alone at the airport. She carried a brown suitcase that contained all her worldly possessions, and offered a kind smile to any passerbyers. In truth, this girl was an excommunicated nun. The kind smiles she gave masked the sadness that she felt. So this girl was offered a path of redemption. She was given a chance to make everything right in God's eyes, and she would follow this through. She didn't want to be alone anymore. The only life she ever knew was to serve God and help others, and she would endure this trial to absolve her sins. The plane to Japan will be leaving in 20 minutes, the Pa announced. The nun smiled sadly, even if it meant that her trial would take her away from home.
In a dimly lit apartment, a group of people sat hunched over at their workstations, ink stains over their hands as they continued their meticulous work. At one of the workstations sat Issei as he stared over at his other coworkers. Over to his left was a blonde teen with a bandana covering his head and dark bags under his eyes was Issei's coworker, Ryuji Todoroki. Next to Ryuji was a jittery-looking black-haired teen, his eyes wide in concentration as he stared madly at the drawing in front of him. This was Yusuke. Issei never really caught his last name as the man was secretive about himself. At the head of the workstation was a brunette woman with her hair in a side ponytail. She wore a blue shirt with the logo I am the hype. This woman was Makoto Inao, a simple manga artist and also Issei's boss. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. Makoto clapped her hands and flashed a big smile to her subordinates, who looked half dead once she announced work was done. Bed. I need a bed and water. Ryuji groaned, collapsing on his desk. Yusuke held onto a thermos like it was a lifeline, and sighed contentedly as he sipped from the coffee inside. There's nothing better than the rush I get from completing sensei's work. Also the coffee helps too. Slowly, all the people in the apartment left, saying their goodbyes to Makoto until Issei was the last one left. As he began to leave himself, Makoto stopped him. Wait, this is for you. Makoto handed him a package. Issei weighed the box in his hand, confused on why she would be giving him this. Let Olivia know that her big brother is looking after her. Issei smiled at the gift that Makoto had given him. Thank you, sensei. He climbed down the steps and groaned when he saw that his bike was stolen. He had to wonder why Makoto-sensei lived in such a sketchy neighborhood. Because it's cheap. He could imagine Makoto defending her choice of housing. After a long, arduous walk, he finally spotted the sign that read Blue Moon Apartments. Ah, home at last. He ruffled through his pockets and bagged to search for his keys when he remembered they were in the apartment itself. Issei decided that he needed to relieve some stress at the moment and banged his head against the door. A finger poked him in the side and he turned his head to see his landlady, Ryuko, was shaking her head at his antics. She was a young-looking woman with gray hair, wearing a dark blue kimono that accentuated her striking cerulean eyes and warm smile. Issei-kun, how are you always forgetting your keys? Ryuko smiled good-naturedly. He honestly wondered which deity sent the woman because she was always there to help him out. Sorry, Ryuko-basan. I'm just tired. How's Olivia-chan? He asked. Still sleeping, I caught her waiting for her big brother. Issei smiled sadly at that. Don't be so hard on yourself, Issei-kun. She loves her big brother very much. He muttered his thanks before dragging his legs inside, with the landlady reminding him of the rent that was due next week. His stomach grumbled in anger, demanding to be fed, and he robotically tried his best to enjoy the ramen cup for his late dinner, early breakfast. Once done, he stealthily made his way inside his little sister's room, being careful not to disturb her. Issei reached into his bag and took out the package that Makoto had gifted him. In his hand was a little, red stuffed dragon. He smiled at the gift and sat by her bed. Issei's fingers stroked Olivia's hair and she snuggled deeper into the comforting hands. He smiled ruefully, putting the toy dragon in her arms. He left the room and the door closed with a soft click. He didn't bother taking his clothes off as he collapsed onto his bed. However, any amount of sleep that he got was too little before his alarm, cheerful in its job, blared loudly reminding him to get up. He lazily disconnected the power cord and settled in for a nice long rest. Yet again, when Amaterasu decided that 6 o'clock was definitely the time to start the day. One eye opened in anger at the ray of the sun that shined through his open curtain. One of these days, Amaterasu, one of these days, Issei muttered. He rose from his bed, not too dissimilar from the dead rising from the grave. He promptly turned around and closed the curtains, flopping back on his bed. He settled himself once again, a sigh of relief as he did so. He felt warm, comfortable, and most of all relaxed. For about 2 seconds. Onie-chan, Onie-chan. Wake up, Onie-chan. Issei could resist many things, but there were very few that he couldn't. Namely his little sister, Olivia. She peered at him closely with honey-brown eyes and curiosity at his huddled form. He wrapped the blankets around him more tightly as she tugged at trying to wake up her older brother. She tugged a little too hard and saw his exhausted state. Issei only moaned tiredly and sagged to the floor. Ah, Onie-chan is scary. Just tired, Olivia. He groaned while she giggled at his zombie-like demeanor. I'm going to make Onie-chan breakfast. Issei was seated at the table, half awake as he watched Olivia fly around the kitchen with reckless abandon. He couldn't tell if he was hallucinating what he was seeing or if he was dreaming. At last, the meal was served before him and he peeked his eyes open to see. Curry. Ryukasan taught me how to make curry and she said that she learned it from a friend in Tokyo. Olivia placed a cup of coffee next to the dish. Curry and coffee for breakfast? Huh, who would have thought? Issei smiled and dipped his spoon in the curry as Olivia sat across from him. Olivia's expectant gaze lingered on him and he took a spoonful of curry in his mouth. He chewed on the food for a few seconds and smiled brightly at her. It's good. Olivia beamed at him. The pride was clear on her face and she breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. You should get ready for school, Olivachan, Issei said. His heart warmed as she ran off to get her bag. He looked down at the curry that Olivia had made for him and he was reminded of why he had chosen to give up the life of a hero. Heroes died too young. He didn't need to burden Olivia with that. He had Olivia now. That's what mattered. He finished the rest of the meal and got dressed for school, throwing on his blazer. He took a look at himself in the mirror and nodded to himself. Yup, he looked like a FC King zombie all right. But at least, he was awake. I'm ready, Oniichan. Olivia stood in front of him with a blue and yellow sundress complete with a cute hat. Alright, let's go. He opened the door and to his surprise, there stood someone he hadn't expected to see, with their hand raised to knock on the door. Eika. After dropping Olivia off at middle school, the two walked in awkward silence, neither knowing what to say to each other. Issei, tired of the tension between them, asked first. So Tamamasan told me something interesting about you. Eika rubbed her elbow in embarrassment and her face flushed before she retorted. Really, I don't think it could have that interesting. I don't know, a near-death experience sounds pretty interesting to me. Care to share? Issei asked with an amused smile and Eika groaned. Well, I'm a hybrid yokai. Issei stopped. He blinked once and then twice. A hybrid yokai? That's interesting. Yeah, not that common for a vampire, succubus to be running around in the world. Eika said, turning her face away. Did Tamamo explain why you almost bit the dust? She said that, I was highly susceptible to emotions and then I ingested something which I thought was safe but was in fact, poison. What? I accidentally drank Miriama's sweat. Seeing Issei's confused gaze, she elaborated. Tamamo called Kasan and they explained. She paused, letting a few passerbyers walk by. My condition. I have to get life energy from a person whether it's blood, saliva or semen. Is there a reason why succubi need to have sex to get it or? The victim have to feel good, they have to feel happy and pleasurable for us to safely take in their life energy. Someone with extreme negative emotions affects their body chemistry. To us succubi, it's the equivalent of a human trying to live off salt water. Except much worse for me. Issei scratched his head at the new information and shrugged. The more you know. Eika stopped in front of Issei. Is everything okay with Miriama? No, what Sato put her through, it broke her. Issei took a step back at the guttural growl that emanated from Eika. But she's going to get better, I promise. Eika let out a relieved breath. That's a relief. You know, if you're hungry, why don't you suck blood? It's not the most pleasant feeling to drink someone else's blood. Isn't blood delicious for you? Kasan said that my succubus side is much stronger and is more inclined to getting another body fluid. What? Issei's confusion slowly morphed into realization as the rest of her sentence came to him. Oh. Issei's cheeks colored at the thought. Eika's mouth stretched wide into a knowing grin. Why, Issei, I didn't know you were thinking such dirty thoughts about me. Shut up. It was Issei's turn to be embarrassed and Eika giggled in her hand. But if you ever get hungry, Issei said, trying to divert his embarrassment. You can always drink my blood. Eika stood ramrod and her mouth dropped a little at what he just said. Oi, are you sure you know what you're saying? I mean, I can drain you dry if my hunger gets too strong. No wonder why you're so thirsty. I'm serious, Issei, I don't want to lose you. Eika said seriously before she backtracked on her statement and blushed. I mean, I don't want to lose my best guy friend. You're a great guy, Issei, I'd hate to miss out on all the teasing I have on you. Issei chuckled and Eika fumed at his response before she smiled to herself. Thank you, Issei. Tamamo was lounging on her rolling chair, a ball of takoyaki on the tip of her fingers as she scanned over notes. In the corner of the room by the window, Lai Hua sat cross-legged on a chair, a small book in hand as she tried to suppress her irritation. Achilles was playing animatedly on a small purple Game Boy at one of the beds. Achilles, turn down the volume, please, Lai Hua said firmly. Achilles paid her no mind, if anything he got louder. Lai Hua's eye twitched minutely. Last warning, turn it down or I'm going to shut it off permanently. Achilles shouted victoriously. Yeah, woo, screw you, Mike Tyson. I own you. Lai Hua closed her book with a snap and with pinpoint accuracy, it hit Achilles' forehead. He fell off the bed, his Game Boy clattering on the ground. Shut the hell up, you loud bastard. Achilles shot up to his feet. Oi, what the hell was that for? You can't even stay quiet for 1 minute. Hua said, getting up in his face. Hey, this bastard took me a long time to beat, I get to be happy. We don't need to hear your happiness, dumbass. Cyclops, delinquent, Blossom. Oh, you're dead. Hua tackled him on the ground and Tamamo watched the pair fight on the ground with a relaxed calmness. Dinner and show. What more could I ask for? She was broken out of her musings by the knock on her door, to which Issei walked in flanked by Murayama and Eika. He took one look at the bickering pair on the other side of the room and promptly turned his attention to Tamamo. Yo, hello, Issei, Tamamo greeted, nibbling on her snack. She flashed at Eika a big smile before turning attention to Murayama, who played with the hem of her skirt in an attempt to hide from meeting so many different people. Issei, what are we doing here and why are those two fighting with each other? We're here because I'm going to introduce you to some of my closest friends, and those two are fine, they get along pretty well with each other. Issei said, about as well as a house on fire. Eika commented dryly, watching Hua pull Achilles' hair. Hua, Achilles. Issei called out. What? The duo shouted and they turned to see that they had an audience. Issei chuckled at seeing the two blush and promptly stood away from each other. It's a pleasure to see you are well, Murayama-san, Hua said with a small bow. Achilles tried to pass off the last few minutes off nonchalantly, hands on the back of his head. Yeah, same here. Murayama, these are my friends who helped rescue you. Issei gestured to the people in the room. Murayama pointed to Eika. What about Eika-san? I was there as moral support. She was the masked vigilante. Tamamo helpfully supplied much to Eika's indignation. That was you. Achilles turned to her, stared. He zipped over to Issei. Dude, how come you didn't tell me that we practically got a superhero in our group? Issei looked at him in confusion. We're already superhuman. Why do we need a superhero? I mean, our armor and stuff are cool, but the spandex and mask screamed superhero. Achilles stressed. Hua chopped him on the head and dragged him by the scruff of his shirt. Excuse the idiot. Murayama giggled at their antics before she bowed deeply, bending at the waist. Thank you everyone for rescuing me. If I had been trapped there longer, it could have been much worse. I don't know how I can repay you all, Murayama said, tears welling up in her eyes. Don't sweat it, just get stronger and we can kick ass together, Achilles said with a nod. You are not alone, Murayama-san. We cannot ignore such an evil, and any friend of Issei is a friend of ours. Can't let them take our cute kendo captain now, can we? Eika said, sticking out her tongue. Issei's heart warmed as he saw the tension loosen in Murayama. Everyone chatted animatedly with the girl before Eika dragged her out of the room. Come on, let's get some fresh air. This place is getting stuffy. Issei was about to follow when he was stopped by a slender hand on his chest. Issei, you wouldn't mind helping me clean up the mess, would you? Tamamo said with a sultry smile and looked deliberately at one of the beds. Issei smirked and locked the door behind him. I don't know, I'd say it's about to get a lot messier. For the rest of the day, students would swear that there was a strange smell in the nurse's office, but they ignored it in point of how much Tamamo was glowing with joy. Tamamo, you are one insatiable fox. Issei cracked the joints in his neck and relaxed himself as he exited the school building. Hayao-san. The brunette swept his gaze to the side to see the strict beauty that was Sona come up to him. A moment of your time, please. I didn't do anything to get in trouble again, did I? Issei said, a little more than confused at why Sona was speaking to him. In public, he didn't know what he had done to garner so much of her attention. He'd expect her to leave him alone now that her business with him has been finished. Not that I know of, she said bluntly. Her brows furrowed at him. You haven't done anything I should be made aware of, have you? Of course not. Who do you take me for? Sona looked at him blandly and he chuckled, his reputation and action already answering the question. Why'd I interest you in a game? Issei thought that he saw a gleam in Sona's eye when she gave that offer. Sure, he said slowly, staring at the girl oddly with a raised eyebrow. The diminutive girl nodded and he walked alongside her. He studiously ignored the not-so-inconspicuous looks from the other students. Issei felt someone else's eyes were on him. The intent was much stronger than the surrounding students and he tilted his head up to see a crimson-haired girl staring at him in the old school building. Her long flowing hair swayed in the breeze and her blue eyes would have entranced any male in the school. Her looks were especially bewitching. It was for a moment that their gazes met and she left, the intent and aura gone. Something wrong, Issei? Sona spoke up, catching Issei stare off into the air before he shook his head. Nothing, Kaichu. About that game, what are you thinking of? They stopped before the student council room and entered. Sona was greeted by all the club members, all of them bowing respectfully to her. Issei was greeted by stiff nods. She led him to her personal office. I was thinking of a wager. Now this sounds interesting. What kind of wager are we talking about? Issei asked, taking a seat. He had to wonder what her end goal was. If I win in a game of your choosing, I may request a favor from you in the future. Oh, well, that didn't take long, but why would she need a favor from him? What could he do that would? Issei paused and inwardly groaned. She was too perceptive for her own good and he sorely wished that he hadn't revealed himself. Or that she wasn't so FC King smart. Kaichu, this a little too forward of you, don't you think? Issei joked and Sona shook her head. Not that kind of favor. If I lose, then you may ask me for anything you want. Issei's grin widened at that. Within reason, of course. Issei looked at her with skepticism. This sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? Just that you name your game, Hayao-san. Issei stroked his chin in thought. As Issei was deciding on the game, Sona sat behind her desk confident that she would win any game that he would pick. She wasn't sorry for going around Ria's back, but she needed insurance if he ever got out of control. She knew what kind of man Issei was. He didn't take promises lightly. If anything, he was religiously serious about it. Issei snapped his fingers. How about we play shogi? An imperceptible smirk made its way on Sona's face. Checkmate. Man, what a day. Issei leant against the railing of a bridge staring at the sunset. He marveled at how much life had changed for him over the years. The dangerous lifestyle and short life expectancy of a hero had disheartened him. He had once thought that a normal, ordinary life would be dream. A far-off dream that seemed out of his reach. Now, he was here, living that dream, for the most part anyway. But he couldn't but feel certain sense of dread creep through his being. As if that he would wake up at any moment. Issei was broken out of his thoughts when he noticed a girl had completely snuck up on him. That or he was way too deep in thought, but that didn't matter. The young woman before him was beautiful, Issei had to admit to himself, long black hair that reached her hips and violet eyes. She wore a school uniform that he had never seen before. Excuse me, you're Hayao Issei from Kyo Academy? The mystery girl asked, fiddling with her school bag. I am, Issei said, the sense of dread growing stronger as he continued to talk to her. That's great. So, Issei-kun, do you have a girlfriend? She asked, pulling at her skirt. The combination of cuteness and trepidation confused the hell out of him. No, he said lamely. This situation was entirely unexpected for him, and the best response he could give was so pathetic. He felt the urge to facepalm right there. Really? Then the girl stammered. A chilling feeling spiked and she bowed towards him with a letter. Would you please be my boyfriend? Issei leapt back from shock and he processed her last few words. Shock was clear on his face. Wait, what? Issei's mouth hung open in shock. Holy shit, I have somehow managed to get a girl to confess her love to me without doing anything. He thought as he watched the girl with an impassive gaze. He didn't know what that feeling was before, but he still couldn't shake it. A voice at the back of his mind was yelling, it's a trap. Who was Issei's ever-intelligent response? I understand if you don't want to. She bowed her head in an expression of disappointment and sorrow. Issei was torn between his gut feeling and his teachings of don't make a girl cry otherwise he'd feel like an ass. He feared Tamamo's fury if she ever found out. What I meant to say was that I don't know you well enough to be your boyfriend, but I'd still like to go on a date with you, he said, and the girl's features brightened up. Oh, that's great. She pressed her hand against her chest in relief. I didn't introduce myself earlier, but my name is Amano Yuma. It's nice to meet you, Yuimachin. They exchanged phone numbers with each other and she waved goodbye to him. He was alone again on the bridge, a slip of paper in his fingers, the girl's digits written on it. He stared at the digits between his fingers, not sure whether to feel lucky or not. The foreboding feeling never left him as he pocketed the number and headed towards home. This should end well. A white-haired girl stepped out from where she was hiding, a small icicle in her hands as she watched Issei walk away. Issei blinked. He looked around the pitch-black room he was in, and nothing but the inky darkness welcomed him. An incessant buzzing rang in the back of his head. The harsh noise buzzed louder with each second until it mercifully stopped. Issei looked down to see that he was seated in a leather chair, his hands bound to the armrests by an invisible force, and he blinked again. The darkness was gone, and opposite him was a dwarfish man in a red pinstripe suit, seated in a similar chair. On the dwarfish man's left was a border collie dog who stared curiously at Issei, and on his right stood a man in a straitjacket and an iron mask. The Maklu, Issei, hot Roy lose, the dwarfish man said, his voice haunting and gravelly as he stared at Issei with a mad smile. Issei frowned as he tried to decipher what the man was trying to say. I don't suppose you come with subtitles. Issei flinched as the man started cackling. The dog whined and the man in the iron mask screeched at the sounds. The dwarfish man's laugh reverberated around them, and then his bloodshot eyes focused on Issei again. Oira idiak nisuma. The dwarf coughed into his gloved hand. Can you hear me now? Yes, that's much better actually, Issei said, more than a little irritated at his uninvited guests. Now, first question, who are you? Second, where the hell are we? And 3, who let the insane asylum patient out? The masked man gave a mocking laughter before straining against his straitjacket and launching himself at Issei. He stopped short before Issei and glared venomously at him. Issei noted the golden eyes and how they seemed to shine with hatred for him. The dwarf flicked a finger and the man flew back by his side. You're quick to ask questions, but that is understandable. Don't mind, old flax here, the dwarf said, chuckling. He stood up from his chair and bowed to Issei. As for who I am but a humble guide to troubled souls. You may call me Edgar. Edgar clapped his hands and all the darkness was banished as they were in a wooden cottage. Issei could smell toasted almonds, the rich texture of the carpet beneath his feet, and the roaring fire where the hearth was. Along the walls were trinkets that he recognized from his travels, a piece of cracked stone, Odin's tankard, a tooth of a basilisk, a box of matches, and Tiamat's glowing jewel. His inspection ended when he noticed that the brown, mahogany wood of the wall was blackened. To Issei's confusion, half of the cottage looked like it had been burnt down and the other half where Edgar, the dog, and the insane man were looked intact. Dear me, you have been reckless in your life. Too self-sacrificing. The state of your soul reflects that much. Edgar hummed, inspecting the box of matches. My soul. But of course, that is where we are. Then why are you here? Why are you helping me? Your future is undoubtedly clouded. The bonds you have made so far are strong, but you shall need more allies for what is to come. I am here to help when it is necessary and for when the end comes. And believe me, Issei, the end will come sooner than you think. I ain't going to be dropping dead anytime soon, old-timer, Issei said, an edge to his declaration. Edgar's mad grin got wider and he snapped his fingers once more. A black door emerged behind Edgar, chains intertwined over it and 3 padlocks were securing the whole thing together. Issei paled once he caught sight of the door. You recognize this door? Yes. Issei glared at the man in response. How do you know? Edgar's face twisted into a snicker and slowly it morphed into full-blown laughter. He punched the floor in his laughing fit. The dog whined again, covering its ears, and the insane man struggled in his restraints. Issei heard Edgar's voice next to him and he whipped his head to see the man's maddening smile. Issei didn't even see the man move, and yet he had appeared right next to him. It is my business to know, and for you to find out. Edgar drew closer and leaned forward until their heads were practically touching. The wheel turns ever closer, the sword of destiny is being drawn and the end draws closer. Edgar drew back from Issei, watching the storm of emotions across his face. You can no longer run away from it. Goodbye, Issei, we will meet again soon. Everything vanished and Issei was falling into the darkness. The last thing he saw was Edgar's smile. A beautiful, buxom woman sniffed irritably at the open room. In front of her were the remains of a wooden door, the rusted hinges having fallen off years ago, and she stepped over into the threshold of the derelict church. At the end of the room was a young blonde girl, who would fit right in with the locals. Their predilection towards Lolita fashion still baffled the woman sometimes. Reina, oh, it's just you. A girl's enthusiasm dying as soon as she spotted the blue-haired woman. What are you doing back, Calawarner? I took the liberty of scouting the town as Reina requested of us, said Calawarner, giving Middlet an unimpressed look. I found nothing of significance bar the obvious devil presence at the academy. Really? And here I was hoping that you were dumb enough to get yourself killed. Middlet barked a laugh as it was Calawarner's turn to roll her eyes. Calawarner tossed the little girl her snacks, who deftly caught the box of sweets before digging straight into it. Always the joker, aren't you? She said, stretching her back out, and the girl glared at the woman, more notably at her BRSDS that were being kept in place by her strained trenchcoat. Don't worry, you'll grow up too, eventually. Middlet flipped her off. I see everyone is here. A warm voice greeted at the entrance of where the door was. Yuma Mano walked towards them. The school uniform that she had been wearing morphed into a black leather thong piece with small straps covering her BRSDS. Her body became fuller and more mature, and the innocent mask was replaced by Rainier. Middlet piped up from her perch. What about Donasik? What about him? Rainier asked, raising an unconcerned brow. If he's not here for the meeting, then that's his problem, so why should I waste my time waiting? Middlet shrugged, the usual uncaring attitude when it came to the man in question. A middle-aged man stepped out of the shadows, as if he was a detective out of a noir film. A trench coat closed around his body and a fedora concealed the man's eyes. Perhaps then, we should get this meeting started. Donasik drawled, facing all of them. Still stalking around in the shadows, Pedoman. Middlet sniped at him, enjoying the way that his jaw clenched and unclenched. And you're still playing the child, as always. Donasik sneered, his lips snarling in disgust at her. Enough, let's get back on track. Did the target take the bait, Rainier? Calawarner asked, crossing her arms under her bust, which served to further annoy Middlet. She flipped her hair and smirked arrogantly. Of course, Calawarner. It's me, after all. Rainier had been in this game for a long time now. She was a professional when it came to the art of seduction. With this one, all she had to was to feign a schoolgirl's shyness, and he was left stammering for words. Perhaps she was right earlier, this task was too boring. Then we shouldn't have a problem now, but what about the rest of the plan? Calawarner asked. She knew that everything was routine, but she couldn't stop a nagging feeling in her gut. Like this was too easy. Come now, Kala, have some more confidence. Donasik coughed into his mouth, interrupting her. What of the nun? What will you be doing with her? Rainier's brow crinkled in distaste at the man. Donasik was placed in her team by Cockabeel, a not-so-subtle way to say that he was keeping tabs on them. That was after the fact that Donasik himself was someone she highly distrusted. She'd known Calawarner and Middlet for most of her life, but Donasik was an unknown. Although the number in their organization were few, there had been times where fallen angels had betrayed others when it suited them to gain power and favorable position. She knew and trusted her friends, but Donasik, she would be keeping an eye on him. We have arranged for her arrival here. She believes that she is earning God's forgiveness by sacrificing herself for our cause. Rainier chuckled, a bit of mirth at the irony and naivete of the girl. Donasik scoffed at that. How foolish. We have what we need for the ritual and will do so according to Cockabeel-sama's instructions. Rainier stilled. The air grew colder and a chill went through everyone's spine as Rainier turned around. The innocent smile she used to enamor Issei had returned, but it froze everyone to the core. She stalked towards Donasik and stood right in front of him. Donasik was a head and half taller than the young woman standing before him, yet he couldn't help the feeling of being small in her presence. The look in her eyes scared the man and she whispered, "Don't ever mention that name again." Issei idly drummed his fingers on the desk, waiting for Madohama to finish his assessment of the, in Matsuda's words, clearly fake girl's number. The teen's glasses hid his eyes as he continued to analyze the digits in his hand. Well, what do you think? Issei drawled, chin in his palm. Still believe that I can't get a date. You're right, I still don't, Madohama said. He stood up and jabbed an accusatory finger at him. This is totally a fake number. Yeah, there is absolutely no way that you of all people could get a date, Matsuda declared, matching Madohama's vigor with his own finger. Issei stared at the two in bemusement. Oi, why would I lie? Cause, you've never gotten a number before, let alone a date, Matsuda said, waving his protest dismissively. Issei snorted at him. Like you're the expert on the matter. Eika sidled up alongside Issei, her glasses flashing in the light. What's this about a date? These two think that I can't get a girl's number, and I forgot to add, she wanted me to be her boyfriend. Boyfriend? Huh, were Eika's and the perverted duo's cries. What do you mean, be your boyfriend? Eika said, her face mere inches away from Issei. Issei leaned back in his chair to get some distance from her. Eika, personal space. Issei, answers. I'm your best friend, she said, much to Matsuda and Madohama's chagrin. Hey, that's debatable, Madohama whined. Eika's head whipped to where Madohama was, and the glint in her eyes told Madohama that this line of conversation would not end well for him. This is blasphemy, Issei. I go out of my way to be the best wingwoman, which I declined, he interjected, and set you up with those dates, and then you send them to the friend zone. It's like you're trying to cockblock yourself, and now you go and get some girl's number without even consulting me. Eika sighed in frustration. I thought you'd be happy. Isn't me striking out on my own a good thing for you? I am. I just wanted to be there when you did it. Eika wailed melodramatically onto Murayama, who looked baffled at what she walked into. Oh, Murayama, he's growing up so fast. Matsuda scoffed. He's just playing with you. That number ain't even real. Issei released a resigned breath before he held up his phone and dialed the number. They all watched him with bated breath. Moshi, this is Yuuma. The pair fell back in shock while Eika's overdramatic wails got louder, much to poor Murayama's confusion. No way. Issei's smile widened at seeing the pair's reaction. Hey, Yuuma-san, this is Issei. I'm just calling to confirm that our date is still on this weekend. Of course, you're not planning to back out, are you? She said skeptically. Issei's lips stretched further into a Cheshire grin. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Thanks, see you later, Yuuma-san. Okay, see you, Issei-san. The call ended and Issei sat back smugly in his chair. He was immediately assaulted with more questions and accusations. Mostly accusations. Eika sat in the corner, with utter dismay as a depressed cloud formed above her while Murayama did her very best to try and understand what was going on. She didn't get the clue until second period. Issei-kun, you're looking quite handsome today. Ryuko smiled, tending to Olivia, who stared at her brother as he continued to adjust his clothing. He looked at the boy back in the mirror, the white t-shirt contrasting well with the red underneath, and he slapped on a pair of blue jeans before nodding to himself. He was ready for his date. Wow, Oni-chan looks so cool. Olivia cheered happily. The little girl was dressed in a pair of overalls and a striped shirt. Ryuko was styling her chestnut brown hair into two loose ponytails, and Issei could already see how fast she was growing. Pretty soon, he'd be beating off the boys with a stick, or a katana, whichever got the message out faster. Yup, your big brother will always be cool for you. He patted her head and she blushed at the treatment, beaming happily at her elder brother. Thanks again, Ryuko-san. Issei hugged the woman and she patted him on the shoulder, dusting away any loose hairs. Issei-kun, you deserve to relax today on your date, and I'll make sure Olivia does not get into mischief. Ryuko rubbed the top of Olivia's head affectionately and she huffed at having her hair messed up. But she still beamed her Olivia smile at him. Have fun on your date, Oni-chan, and Eika said to tell you something. Issei raised a brow at that. Don't be a man whore today, Olivia said quite cheerily. Issei blanched at what she said and Ryuko raised a hand to her mouth. Oh my, Olivia's face scrunched up into a confused frown. Oni-chan, what's a man whore? Ryuko smiled at what she said, directing her attention back to Issei. Yes, Issei, what exactly does she mean by that? Issei wasn't exactly excited at the prospect of telling his little sister what that meant, and he was decisively less so today. I'll tell you when you're older. Please behave with Ryuko-san and don't say that word again, he said sternly before squeezing her in for a hug. They waved him off at the front door and Issei reminded himself to get back at Eika for the comment, even though she was ticked off that she didn't land him a date. He arrived at the scheduled spot earlier than the usual time. He breathed in the air of the park, the shoppers coming and going, and took in the sights of the town. There were kids begging their mothers for the new action figure. A couple of girls were laughing and giggling as they walked past. This was it. This was what he got out for. And now he was going on an actual date. A proper teenage date. And yet the feeling from yesterday once again surfaced as he continued to wait longer for his date. He turned and almost knocked over someone. He reflexively ducked around her before she blinked at his surprising athleticism. Now that he had a good look at her, she looked like someone who belonged at a cosplay convention. The older, dark-haired woman in the vampire outfit handed him a flyer with a smile. Eika would get a kick out of seeing this. Here, take a flyer. Issei took the slip of paper with a shrug. He looked over the flyer in his hand and examined the strange crest on it. We grant your wish. He assessed the summoning circle in his hand. A low-level summoning circle based on desire, mass-produced and being handed out like a pamphlet. The residue energy suggests that it's devilish in nature. He looked up to see that the woman had gone off to hand out more flyers to other people, and he pocketed it before turning to see Yuma waving towards him. She flushed in embarrassment. "Sorry, I kept you waiting, Issei-kun." Issei took a moment to look at her. She was wearing a short black dress with a small light purple jacket on top, and he found it to be quite appealing. Many heads would turn at her simple yet stunning appearance. "Don't worry, I just got here as well." He watched in amusement as she breathed a sigh of relief at his words. He didn't want to make his date feel bad after all. "You look beautiful." Yuma's cheeks tinted with red at his sincere compliment. "If it's not too much trouble, Issei-kun, can we end our date at the park at sunset?" Why specifically at sunset?" "I thought we could make it special by watching the sunset together." She seemed to blush at her own words before Issei smiled at her request. "As you wish." He nodded before putting his arm out for her. "Shall we? Lead the way." Why did it have to be so perfect? Rainer had to wonder to herself. Issei had taken her throughout town, never staying at one venue for too long, as they soon seemed to have made their way throughout the entire prefecture. She remembered one instance when they were trying on some clothes. "Issei, does this dress look good on me?" She had changed from her normal outfit to a red dress that hugged her body, showing off the contours of her hips, waist, and bust. She spun around, showing it off. All of the men in the store were drooling with lust, and the women were enraged at seeing their boyfriends blatant ogling. Issei idly looked up from his seat and gave her a once-over. To be honest, he'd look better in nothing. Her face reddened heavily at the implication. She had been preparing herself to kill him, just looking for anything that would give her more pleasure once she'd shoved her spear through his chest and watched the life drain from his eyes. "It's a shame what I'll have to do later. He isn't as boring as expected," Rainer thought to herself. Her train of thought was broken as Issei suddenly stopped, his hair shadowing his face, and she found herself scared that her target had grown suspicious of her. She followed his line of sight to see a scruffy-looking man on a bicycle, and she could hear the boy next to her heave a shuddering breath as he gently placed her shopping bag to the ground. "Issei-kun, what's wrong?" she said in concern as he began to crack his knuckles. "Excuse me, Yu-machin, if you can just wait here for a moment. I'm just going to have a chat with someone who took a liking to my bike. I promise I'll be back." Issei took off in a sprint as he yelled obscenities at the scruffy-looking man, who looked taken aback before panic set in as he tried to ride away. Rainer stared in shock as a multitude of emotions ran through her as she watched her date run off on her. She was bemused at why Issei was cursing loudly at someone in public, but that was overshadowed by the fact that she'd let her target run off. She stood there waiting impatiently for a few minutes until she heard the roar of a motorcycle engine. Rainer looked down the road to see a man on a motorcycle headed towards her. She was about to duck out of the way, but the motorcycle swerved around until it was positioned parallel to the sidewalk. She couldn't see the man's face due to it being covered by his helmet. Then the visor slid up. "Issei, no time to explain, get on now." She was dumbfounded for a moment until she heard the roar of several more motorcycles and quickly complied. "Issei, what's going on?" she shrieked as he revved up and accelerated away before being followed by other bikes who shouted over the wind. "Oi, bastard, give back Aniki's bike. Die, asshole. Hold tight," she squeaked as she wrapped her arms tightly around him. The motorcycle swerved in and out of traffic. They were still giving chase to him, and Issei noticed that Yuma had squeezed him tighter, her BRSDS pressed tightly against his back. He put that out of his mind, however, when he noticed that they were getting closer to him. "FCK, he's good. Call the boys to come in on the other exit," one of them yelled. Rainer would swear that she had never felt her heart beat faster in her life until she got on the bike with Issei. They were heading towards a section of the highway that was still in the process of being constructed. "Ha, look at that, he's at a dead end. We got him, boys." The bikers were eagerly coming up on Issei's tail with smug grins. Looking ahead at a ramp, he saw his one chance to escape and accelerated faster. Rainer paled when she felt the bike speeding up instead of slowing down. "Slow down, Issei. We're going to go over the edge." "Yuma, do you trust me?" he asked from behind, and he felt her nod against his back. "Take my helmet off and put it on yourself." "But Issei, hurry." Following his instructions, the helmet went over her head and she wrapped her arms tighter around him, trusting him completely in that moment. "No way, he's gonna jump." The bikers shouted incredulously, their wheels screeching as they braked. "The kid's going to die." Issei revved the bike harder and they soared off the highway. As the wheels left the ramp, they soared through the air. Issei could swear that he felt a rib pop as Yuma hugged him as hard as she could. A feeling of weightlessness fell upon them. Irk, until the tires met the road again. He exited off the road quickly as the biker's jaws dropped at the suicidal stunt that Issei pulled. Rainer's heart beat rapidly against her ribcage until she was snapped out of her shock by Issei. He had a wide grin on his face as he broke into raucous laughter. Yuma didn't know whether to laugh at the absurdity of the situation or the euphoria she felt from escaping unscathed, and found herself holding back tears of mirth with Issei. Issei propped the bike against a tree and took Rainer by the hand to the fountain, resting down on the stone as she sat down next to him. "What a way to end a date," he chuckled. "That's understating it." She giggled. Rainer found herself conflicted. She didn't want this day to end, but she had an assignment. If she didn't fulfill it, she would suffer a fate worse than death at Cockabeel's hands. Issei, too, he held up a finger to stall her as he reached into his pocket. He brought out a silver pendant with an intricate circle and a small crest weaved into it, and Yuma couldn't help the stab of guilt as she quietly accepted the gift, putting it around her neck. Can you see it, Yuma-chan? He pointed towards the orb that was waning over the horizon, and she was taken aback at the kaleidoscope of colors that filled the sky. The perfect end to a date. You know it won't last, but you can still savor every moment of it. She bit her lip as she continued to watch with Issei, who had a serene smile on his face. Beautiful. Yeah, you were right about the sunset. I wasn't talking about the sun. She felt herself flush and the pounding in her chest got faster. See, can you please close your eyes? She cursed herself for stammering, and she had to use all her willpower to go through with it, but a tiny voice inside her wished otherwise. You don't have to do this, you can lie. As you wish. He closed his eyes and an easygoing smile was on his face. She leaned forward to capture his lips, and Issei's arms enclosed around her. A simple kiss, but it was more. So much more. She poured everything into it, the desires that Rainier dared not hope to have, but for one moment, she could be honest with herself, she could be Yuma Amano. She tore herself away from him, whispering, I'm sorry. She changed into her true form, her clothes shredding to be replaced by a black leather thong with gloves running up her arms, ending in a shoulder guard with 3 large spikes and matching thigh-high heel boots. She morphed from a young teen to a mature woman as black wings sprouted and she flew up from him. You imagine what's going on? A look of confusion sprouted across his face and his eyebrows raised at her changed outfit. I mean, that's a pretty neat trick, but I'm not sure you should be wearing that in a park. My name's not Yuma, it's Rainier. This isn't a trick. Before you die, I want you to know that I had a really fun time today. It's a shame I couldn't keep you as a pet. She materialized a pink spear in her hand. If there's anyone to blame, blame God for giving you a sacred gear. She threw it towards him. He was still human, after all. Humans never lived long. It's really impolite for you to try to kill someone on the first date. Her eyes widened as she watched him shatter her spear. But I guess that's expected from a fallen angel. What? How did you survive? Her feelings forgotten for the moment at the fact that Issei just held her light spear. Push-ups, sit-ups, and plenty of juice, he said with a straight face, his demeanor changing to one of calm confidence. I've been getting a bad feeling all week. I thought I was being paranoid. Here I thought I could just have a fun date, but it turns out to be an assassination attempt. I'm sorry, Issei-kun, but you're too much of a threat to our organization to be allowed to live. She materialized more light spears and threw them forward. Issei weaved through the hail and shattered any that he couldn't dodge. If you're going to kill me, can you at least put some effort into it? He drawled as he stepped forward. Rainier growled and a dozen spears, much bigger than before, formed in the air. She took 2 seconds to form those spears. That's a short window of time, but she's a bit sluggish when she throws them. Issei watched Rainier snarl as the projectiles glowed brighter. Is this enough effort for you? The light spears flew faster than before, and Issei simply stood his ground as a huge explosion kicked up the dust where he stood. I stand corrected. She's a lot faster than I thought. He lowered the magical barrier he'd put up before she could see it. That all you got, you imagine? The smoke cleared away to reveal Issei unharmed from the attack as he continued forward. I know. I'm that awesome that I can leave you breathless without doing anything. Rainier's eyes widened as he nonchalantly dusted off his shirt. That's not possible. Nothing is impossible. I practically achieve it every day. With supreme effort, light formed in her hands and she dive-bombed towards Issei. The sword she had formed pointed at his head. Issei cursed and ducked to the side. TCH, then it's just going to be a little harder to kill you. Rainier stabbed her blade forward with a cry. The blade was parried by Issei's metal glove, and Issei's eyes widened at the dagger that was going for his stomach. It was close, it only managed to graze his shirt, but blood seeped out of the small cut. Issei dabbed at the small cut before he smirked at her. At least, I wore red today. Really, I'm sure you missed a spot. She punctuated her statement with another swing. Issei dropped to the ground and swept her legs out from here. Her back hit the ground a moment later, the breath leaving her. The back of Issei's gauntlets glowed, the magic symbol lighting up, and his fist sailed forward to meet her head. She rolled away before the ground cracked from the force of the hit. A plume of dust and dirt erupted forward and she shielded her eyes from the debris. Shit, I underestimated him. He's no ordinary human. Her eyes scanned over where Issei was. His breath came out in harsh pants, the effort tiring him more than he thought. She dashed forward, another spear materializing in her hand. Now's my chance. Issei barely managed to keep from being pierced. The malicious grin on Rainier's face knew that she wasn't going to waste this opportunity. She was relentless, her sword battering away at his defenses. Every time Issei parried, Rainier would find a small crack and exploit it. A nick here, a slash there, all small wounds, but they were building up. He pounced back once more, but his back was against a tree. She grinned, confident in her victory. You lose. Not yet. She lunged forward with all her might. Issei waited, breathing in and out. His eyes watched the blade carve through the air. He parried once more with the back of his gauntlet. The next strike came from where he expected, to his stomach. His next block managed to shatter her blade into particles. She wasn't deterred. She continued to assault him with more bladed weapons, hoping that one of them would come through. Issei knew that she had to get tired at some point because he sure as hell was. Issei watched her create another spear, but this one was half-formed, less solid than the others. She thrust it once again, but this time he caught it. A shark-like grin on his face as he dragged her forward. You were good, but he pressed 2 fingers to her exposed midriff. It's over. What? You're going to poke me to death? You've exposed yourself as well. I can stab you from this distance. Light particles coalesced in her hand. Sorry to say, but you've lost. Issei smirked. Her arrogance was her downfall. She didn't know that his fingers were positioned over her kidney. Red Dragon Lance. Issei clenched his 2 fingers into a fist. The attack launched into her unprotected kidney. Blood and spit flew from Rainer's mouth. Her guts churned, and it felt like the blood in her body was replaced by battery acid by his punch. The shocked woman collapsed to the ground. Issei spat a glob of blood to the side. Well, that was easy. Holding out a hand, a summoning circle flared on the ground in front of him, and in a blue flash, Tamamo appeared in all her natural glory. Tamamo-chan, I need your help. Of course. Tamamo narrowed her eyes at the unconscious fallen angel. And who is she? Issei rubbed his head sheepishly. She was on my date. She looked back and forth between Issei and the unconscious woman. You know, you don't need someone unconscious to do that. That's not what. Look, she tried to kill me and I need information from her, Issei said. And you want me to take her back to your apartment? Tamamo crossed her arms under her bust and stared at Issei. Yup. He pecked her forehead and the top of her mouth curved into a sweet smile. Scooping Rainier over her shoulder, she was gone, a magical circle teleporting her back. Shaking his head, he took out the flyer from his pocket and made a wish. The circle glowed and electricity arced from it before 2 beautiful girls appeared. He expected Riaz when she showed up, but he was pleasantly surprised to see Akino. The first thing he noticed about her was her hair, tied with an orange ribbon. It was long enough to reach her legs, and he took note of her violet eyes that was shining with mischief. She had a voluptuous figure and an even bigger bust than Riaz. Many would call her a Yamato Nechiko, and he could see why. When I wished for a beautiful girl to show up, I didn't realize that I would get a 2-for-1 deal. He complimented, and the girls blinked in surprise at seeing Issei summoning them. I'm assuming that the both of you are devils. And how did you know that? Riaz asked with a raised brow. Besides the obvious, if I actually focus my senses, I can feel demonic energy coming from the 2 of you, and there is no way on earth that 2 beauties like you could exist, Issei said with a charming smile. Ara, you're quite the smooth talker, Issei-kun. Akino greeted with a warm smile, nodding politely to him. Why have you summoned us? Riaz inquired, crossing her arms. Would you be willing to answer something for me? He asked in a pleasant tone, taking a seat on the fountain, making sure to brush away the debris. Now that the ladies were taking notice of their surroundings, they could see the signs of battle had happened. What happened here? Riaz asked. I got dumped by my date. You got dumped by your date. A cryptic smile was all that she received before his voice lowered an octave and his eyes pinned Riaz to the spot with his piercing gaze. Pretty coincidental, you know. Someone handing out a flyer with your crest on it, my date being a fallen angel. Imagine my surprise when she wanted to kill me. She was unnerved by how his eyes seemed to look past her, stare deep into her soul. She had to keep her voice from faltering when she answered him. Then you've managed to eliminate her. Not quite. She's got answers to some questions that I want to ask. But we're not here for that, we're here for you. Namely, the fact that you were waiting for me to die, he said, with a cheerful smile. The 2 froze at his words. Didn't expect me to know, did you? Issei chuckled. I just want to know. Why? Because you had a sacred gear that I needed. She tried her hardest not to squirm on the spot. Always with the sacred gears today, he muttered before he dropped his gaze from her, and she breathed a sigh of relief. It's funny, the last person who wanted me dead isn't around anymore. I wonder why. She stiffened at his words, noting the predatory grin that was directed at her. But I'm sure we can discuss this tomorrow. It is getting late after all. Since I summoned the 2 of you here, I guess you'll be wanting payment, and before you ask, my soul and me joining your peerage are off the table. She composed herself quickly, and the president of the Occult Research Club was back in place. She kicked herself mentally that she had let her guard down like that before. Very well, if I can't have you as payment, then can I have you join the Occult Research Club? Sure, that seems pretty straightforward. He blinked, accepting the request. Ara, but you, what about my payment? I was summoned as well. Akino frowned, and Issei found her expression to quite amusing, chuckling to himself. I'll offer any payment, but the same condition still stands, Aiknasen. Ara, I don't want anything right now, Issei-kun, just a favor in the future. As you wish. In any case, I'll see you 2 tomorrow. Bye. He turned around, walking off as she stood there miffed at his sudden departure, and a burning question was on the forefront of her mind. Wait, before you go, who are you, Issei? He turned his head slightly and gave her a lopsided grin. I'm a nobody, Riaz. I'd like to keep it that way. Frowning, she was about to say something but stopped herself. She knew asking him now was pointless and that he would talk to her tomorrow. A red runic circle appeared underneath her, and Akino taking them away. Donasik tapped his finger on his arm as the other members of the group were keeping silent. After the first hour of waiting, they thought she was playing with her target. The second hour, they grew worried that something had happened in her assignment. By the third hour, it was all but confirmed, and now they were thinking about their next move. Rainier has failed. The target has either kidnapped or killed her. Donasik announced the news to them. Middle spoke up, angry that this jerk didn't have faith in her friend. We don't know that yet. Maybe she's extracting more information from him. Whatever the case may be, she has not returned, and we have contingencies in place in case she failed. Calawarner frowned at the information. She had known Rainier for a long time. She didn't believe that Rainer simply failed in her mission. She had done this before, many times, and although there were a few close calls, she always succeeded. But maybe her gut feeling was right this time. She would mourn her friend later. Right now she had a mission to fulfill, and a soon-to-be dead man to hunt. Very well, as the next most senior. Actually, Calla Warner, Donasi cut in before she could finish, and Middle sniffed at the interruption. Calla Warner maintained her composure well by not snarling at the man. I will be taking over as the leader. Hey, Paula's got the experience, she's better for the job. Who made you the leader? Takabil-sama actually. In any case, we need to take more precautions. Rainer got too cocky and look what happened to her. Middle gritted her teeth and marched towards Donasik. Don't UFC King dare. Enough. Calla Warner put an arm over her. We understand. Middle spluttered in protest. But Calla, stop, Middle. He's right. The mission takes priority and we're going to kill the bastard who did this. Calla Warner let the anger out and her eyes sharpened. You can count on it. Rainer groaned, her eyes blinking awake as she tried to adjust herself. She looked around to see herself in an unfamiliar bed with cream walls. There was a desk was off to the side with paper strewn all over and the sun was shining through the window. Her attention turned towards the small child who was peering at her with her head tilted. She was taken aback at how such a little girl could sneak up on her. Someone trained to be an assassin. Hi, my name is Olivia. What's your name? She peered at her, witty and innocent as any child could be, but she radiated purity and kindness that she hadn't seen since Sesh banished the thought before it went down that road. Rainer. She didn't mean to say her true name. She wanted to say something else, to say Yuma, but something compelled her to speak honestly. That's a weird name, but I like it. You're really pretty, Rainer Anison. Oniichin has a lot of pretty friends. Olivia spoke, rocking back and forth on the balls of her feet at the prospect of befriending her, with her smile brightening up the room, and she yelled, Oniichin, your pretty friend is awake. Footsteps echoed on the wooden floorboards as Issei stood in the doorway, albeit he had his school uniform on. All right, Amato, go get your pancakes. Tamamasan is making them today. Pancakes. She raced out of the room, leaving Issei and Rainer alone. She shifted uncomfortably, drawing the blanket around her, with Issei continuing to observe her. She was the first to break the silence. Why am I alive? Because I need information. Issei didn't dance around the issue and got straight to the point, moving from the doorway. He brought a chair over and sat down next to her. And what's to stop me from killing you and returning back to base? She met his gaze and he quirked an eyebrow at her. Issei debated whether or not to humor her, but decided against it, going straight for the truth. Well, for one, you couldn't really kill me now. You tried your hardest to kill me back at the park and failed. 2, even if I did let you leave, your allies aren't going to be pleased that you got captured by the enemy. There is the possibility that you could have told me their plans, in which case they won't allow any loose ends. So feel free to leave at any point you like. Rainer sat there, her hands in her lap, as the realization that she couldn't return or else she faced death was sobering. Where am I? In my apartment. So what happens to me now? Am I going to be your prisoner forever until you decide to kill me? She turned, directing her anger and resentment towards him. No, but as I said before, I need information on the goal and purpose of why you and your group here. What makes you think I'm going to tell you? I will never betray them. Rainer's glowering eyes met Issei's impassive gaze before he breathed deeply. You said before in the park that you said if I should blame anyone, I should blame God for giving me a sacred gear. So your objective seems to be eliminating sacred gear users before they become a threat to you and your organization, am I right? By the way that Rainer's form stiffened, he was right, and she inwardly cursed herself for carelessly revealing information at the park. Well, you don't have to worry about me having a sacred gear. What? But I confirmed it. I could sense that you had a sacred gear inside you. Yeah, that's a lot more complicated to explain. He chuckled sardonically. In any case, feel free to join us for breakfast and maybe change into your other form. Wait, what do I do here? You can't expect me to stay here and do nothing. Issei turned his head in thought before he shrugged noncommittally. I'm sure Ryakasen can think of something. Besides, if you're going to stay here, I might as well teach you a couple of tricks. You almost got me, but let's chalk that up to me being rusty. And what could you teach me? She said, not at all arrogant and haughty. Besides actually hitting a target, she growled at the reminder. Rainer, I'm going to teach you how to live. She blinked in confusion, wondering what that meant before leaving. He stopped by the doorway. For what it's worth, I really did enjoy our date and I hope I can go on another one with you. Rainer's cheeks flared in embarrassment, her mind drifting back to the date. Issei sighed wearily into his arms as Matsuda and Madohama chatted away in front of him. They were discussing what they did over the weekend as well as their daily ritual on worshipping the female form, much to the disgust and shame of the females around them. All except for Eika, who just whispered under her breath, amateurs. He became aware that someone was watching him and he turned his head to see Murayama staring at him before blushing and realizing that she got caught. She turned away in embarrassment. He figured that now was as good a time as any to talk to her since their last conversation ended with her in the nurse's office. He got up from his desk and strolled over to her and her circle of friends. Murayama-san, is it all right if I talk to you privately? She nodded and they walked outside of the class with many of the classmates speaking animatedly about the deadbeat and the captain of the kendo club leaving together. So what did you want to talk about? Murayama asked. They were in an empty classroom and Murayama was trying not to meet his gaze, finding everything else much more interesting. He rubbed the back of his head, not knowing how to start the conversation but figuring that apologizing was a good way to go. How have you been doing for the last week? I've been okay. Everyone stopped treating me like porcelain at least. Issei nodded at that. The dull hum of lights filled the gap between them. I'm sorry. Murayama was startled at the sudden apology. Hi out ensign, what are you sorry for? I hurt you in our match. If I had taken the fall, maybe held back, none of that. Stop. Issei looked up to see Murayama trembling. I don't want to hear you say that. I don't want to know that you held back for my sake. Issei softened at those words. Murayama was more prideful than he had taken her for. Her commitment to the sword was admirable, and to have someone who beat her try to take back their own victory rubbed her the wrong way. Hi Outausen, too had the time of my life when I was fighting against you, so I'm going to do better. I'll beat you one day, she said with appraisal and respect to him. Hi Outausen, if you are willing, as the captain of the Kendo Club I would like to extend an invitation for you to join us. She offered. Issei stopped and stared at her, his mind racing at being in a club full of hot girls, but he did promise to join Ria's club and he had to slap himself for being as cocky as he was to summon the girls like that. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to decline. I already joined a club. He was truly apologetic given the missed opportunity to spar with someone who had as much drive to the art of the sword as his master. Oh, she said deflating, quite disappointed that he was already taken. But I won't say no to a sparring session this afternoon, Murayama-san. She perked up at that bit of information and quickly left thanking him. He was about to leave the classroom when he noticed a small white-haired girl standing by the doorway. Issei-senpai, Kaneko greeted with the same monotonous tone that she always had. Issei could tell that she was happy to see him even if she didn't know it herself, by the way that her eyes lit up when she caught sight of him and a small almost imperceptible twitch of her lips. Konka-san, how are you this morning? He addressed the girl with a two-fingered salute. I am well, senpai, she acknowledged with a nod. But you told me to inform you to meet her at the old school building this afternoon. Message received. Thanks, Kaneko. She left giving a nod on the way out. After classes had ended, Issei headed straight to the old school building with Eika in tow, finding it quite strange that something as obscure as the Occult Research Club got a building to themselves. He chalked it up for the influence that Ria's had over the school and her connection with Sona. Eika, this is going to be a great big world you're taking a step into. I'm ready to meet this great big world, but I'm not sure if they're ready to meet me, though. That's the spirit. He knocked on the door and heard a voice call out for him to come in. Opening the door, he stepped inside to a view that contrasted greatly with the exterior of the building. The interior had a Victorian style to it. Wooden panels covered the walls, with couches and chairs added tastefully to give it a high-class aesthetic. Off to the side was what he believed to be a setup for a bath, and emblazoned on the floor was a magical circle. A multipurpose teleport circle, a bit more intricate in design, medieval by the looks of it, and takes a decent amount of energy to activate and travel to its intended destination. Not bad. Issei eyed the circle analytically. Welcome to the Occult Research Club. I am the Vice President Akino Haimjima. But you will be with you shortly. Akino bowed with a smile and Issei nodded, continuing his scan of the room. Kaneko was sitting on one of the couches. She nibbled away at a sweet before nodding towards him in silent greeting. A handsome blonde teen walked over and Issei instantly knew who he was, judging by his demeanor and the gentlemanly way that he carried himself. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Hi Outausen, I am Kiba Yudo, he said politely, offering his hand to shake. Oh, please don't call me Hi Outausen, we're all friends here, I'm just Issei. He took the offered handshake and gripped it tightly when he felt Kiba matching him in strength. Kiba turned to the Eika, taking her hand and greeting as well. It's a pleasure to meet you, Kuryusen. It's nice to meet you too, Utausen, she said with a saucy grin that made Kiba's cheeks pinken before he calmed himself. Oh, don't start. Issei had to resist the urge to groan when Eika was working her magic again. He could sense her using her succubus charms as he had gotten curious on how they worked. Needless to say, Matsuda and Madohama acted more like horn dogs to girls that day, causing much chaos which Eika took delight in. I was saying hello. Eika pouted. Kaneko whipped her head towards Eika when she sensed her powers being used but didn't say anything as Akino came in with more sweets and tea. Sorry, I took so long, I was just freshening up, Ria said, coming in from the bathroom. Please, come and sit, you are our guests after all. They both sat down on the comfy sofa and accepted the offered tea from Akino. I'm sorry, but why is Kuryusen here? He spoke up before Eika could explain herself. She has knowledge about the supernatural world, that's why I brought her along. Very well, thank you for telling me about this, and Kuryusen, we are honored to have you in our attendance. The club's merely a facade for your activities as devils, so why did you have me join your club when I summoned you? Issei asked. He tapped his fingers on the couch as he waited. I had you join us because you are an anomaly. You are a total wildcard, and it is my duty to ensure the safety of my peerage, the people of this town, supernatural or otherwise, she stated, much to the surprise of Eika. By having you join my club, I can keep an eye on you and see if you're a potential threat to us. This was amusing to Issei as he had heard the same speech from Sona. Very clever of you. Thank you. I'm just wondering if you're ready to answer my question again. He took a sip from the cup and realization dawned on her as her mind went back to the meeting yesterday. Then what would that question be, Issei? She said quite calmly, refusing to show any weakness. Why do you need me in your peerage so badly? He asked with an eye open. His tone changed from its usual apathy to an uncommon seriousness that had an underlying edge. I told you, it's because I needed your sacred gear, she answered, still sticking with the response she gave him. Issei looked at her for a moment, calculatingly like the way Sona would do sometimes when she faced off against her in a game of chess, and that scared Ria's strange way of phrasing it. What do you mean? Considering that you are a devil, and it is in your inherent nature to desire something, it's odd that you said that you needed instead of wanted my sacred gear. He began, a cheek on his knuckles and his foot crossed over his knee, like a king on his throne. So those words are interchangeable. I don't see what the difference is. Oh, there is a big difference between a want and a need. A want is something that you desire to possess. A need is something that you require because it is important more than it is desirable. Because when you say you needed my sacred gear, it spoke of desperation. So in translation, you needed my strength, you needed power. He paused momentarily to let everyone digest what he had said. Even if you did resurrect me, I can't access my sacred gear. What do you mean? An incident in the past almost cost me my life, but in return I can't use my power lest I be destroyed by it. But I digress. Why do you need strength so badly? She tensed as he continued to deconstruct her words. Gremory, he said. That is your last name, isn't it? Not a common name in the modern world. In the Ars Gotia, however, it's the name of one of the 72 demons that are mentioned. The title of Duke is quite high. Surprise would be an understatement to describe what Rias was feeling right now as she was blown away by how this person, this enigma, could dissect her reasoning all from her wording alone. How do you know? She inquired. I've got people telling me things. One of them being that the heiress of the Gremory clan is slated to marry a son of the Phoenix. Now I did a little digging and I found out that you are in a marriage contract. So, you are forced to marry a man that you don't love and stuck in a contract that you can't escape from. The ones who are forcing you to wed this man are not giving you a choice because you are from a noble and prestigious clan in the underworld, something that you hate with a passion, so they are most likely your parents. You can't refuse them either because it is your duty as an heiress to restore your society to its former glory, and so you try to break the contract instead. Given that you were desperate after probably years of failed attempts to escape this contract, the thought of asking me didn't occur to you, so you waited for me to die and reincarnate me into one of your servants, having you join your peerage. But do you see what the big problem that I find in all of this is? He finished his explanation by sipping once again on his tea. What? She said shakily. That you're one big hypocrite. Instantly, Issei could feel all the members of the club flaring their malice towards him, the one who would dare insult their master, but Rias held up a hand as she looked down shamefaced. He's right. If I had reincarnated him using one of my pieces, then I wouldn't be any better than my parents, giving him no choice in the matter. Isn't that right, Issei-san? You are correct. For all intents and purposes, maybe I didn't want to be a devil, maybe I didn't want you to save me, or maybe I wanted to die. However, you reviving me would have placed me under your servitude. He drawled, but Eika's eye widened at his words. But the Gremory are the kindest people. They accept their peerage members as family, Akino interjected, trying to defend her best friend. Kiba nodded vehemently as well, remembering when she saved him from the brink of death when he had nothing to live for. The Gremory are the exception and not the norm, and I'm not keen on being stripped of my free will. She winced as he shot down her excuse. So Butchu, why do you need me? He spoke calmly, his brown eyes softening at her distress as he could see the emotions in her blue's eyes. Shame, helplessness, desperation, but one that stood out was hope. She was silently pleading with him, and it agonized him to be the source of her anguish. Her lips parted in a whisper, a tiny murmur in the room, but with so much more meaning in those words. It was all Issei needed to hear from her. Because I need your help. Issei stared at her for quite some time. The proud and noble girl before him was begging for his help, but involving himself with the supernatural world would put Olivia in danger. Yet, his heroic instinct pushed to the surface. Help her, like you helped Murayama. Just give me some time to think about it. He sighed. He was still pushing back his indecisiveness. That is understandable. I apologize for not approaching you sooner. Thank you for meeting me here. It was an enlightening discussion. I'll see you tomorrow. Rias nodded mournfully, sad that he didn't say yes but happy that he didn't outright refuse her. Both Issei and Eika left the room, bidding the rest of the club farewell. Issei-kun is turning out to be an interesting character, Akino said. Yes, he certainly is. Kleck. TWACK. Kleck. Wood snapped against wood as two warriors faced each other, locked in combat. They danced around one another, pivoting on their feet as their blades locked once more in a series of precise movements that spoke years of training. The first warrior, only wearing a pair of track pants and a white t-shirt, shot forward, the blade sailing overhead to strike his opponent down. The second warrior, her robe flowing, brought up her own sword to block his in a horizontal movement where they remained in blade lock, neither giving an inch. Something bothering you, Hayao-san? She broke the sword lock, kicking out with her feet, catching him in the abdomen, but he merely grunted, being on the defensive as she hammered away, driving him back. Just a troublesome day, Murayama-san. He raised his bakan, letting the edge of her own slide over as he used the pommel of his sword to jab at her, taking her breath away as she stumbled back. She managed to roll under his swipe and leveled her weapon against him. She was breathing heavily, sweat dripped down her forehead, itching close to her eye, but she suppressed the urge to wipe it away. If this was real combat, she would not give her opponent a chance to deliver a critical hit. Care to tell me about it? Issei twirled his bakken in hand, deep, measured breaths in and out of his mouth, his foot shifted pointing straight forward. Narrowing his eyes, he surveyed her looking for any weaknesses in her stance, but the more time he took, the more stamina she would regain. So he acted. The wooden sword flew forward, startling Mirayama at the speed, and she paid for it, feeling the tip press harshly against her shoulder, wincing at the sharp pain that she felt. She almost dropped her sword but pushed his outwards, trying to slash at him, before he leaned backward and backflipped away. Rias, but you asked me for help with this guy problem that she's been having for a while now. She swung her sword down and he sidestepped the move but paid for it when he felt his arm sting at being hit. Nice moves. Thanks, but why would Ryasone-sama ask you for help? They struggled against each other, with Issei putting his weight behind his attack, trying to dominate her with his strength. I had a particular set of skills that she needed. She let go of the sword, twisting his body, and he landed on his back, moving his head away from the sword that jabbed downward. His sword whipped out, hitting her ankles, and she had fallen down on the mat before she found the edge of a shinai against her throat, with Issei's face inches away from her, their bodies glistening with sweat. She was panting after the intense sparring session. I win. Noticing the close proximity they were in, Mirayama enjoyed how his toned muscles were pressed against her, and she found herself disappointed that he stood up before seeing a hand in front of her. Issei panted, that was a good spar. Thanks, but you were still the better opponent. She brushed herself off, taking the bakken from him. After getting changed and locking up the club, Issei asked her, want to get some yakitori? She smiled at his offer, of course, Hayao-san. Are you going to keep calling me that? You know, you can call me Issei, right? We are friends after all, Issei said exasperatedly. But it's more fun calling you that, Hayao-san. Issei's eyebrow twitched at her passive aggressiveness. Mirayama had her arms wrapped around Issei's waist, driving her home after the offer of food was too good to pass up. She was finding more and more about Issei that she thought were never possible, and she was slightly ashamed of herself for believing that Issei was no more than a deadbeat. But today, he had shown a different side that she didn't expect. When he wasn't sleeping in class, he was funny and caring, often telling her jokes and stories that made her side split from laughter. The earlier sparring session had gotten her fire burning. The close contact and focus into the spar exhilarated her more than anything else, and she wouldn't mind spending more time with Issei. She was startled, however, by the bike swerving on the road, and she saw a trench-coated man standing there, and his gaze fell upon Issei. Issei got off the motorcycle, his helmet ripped off and tossed to the side. Hey, asshole, don't stand in the middle of the road, you're going to get someone killed, you jackass. She was surprised to hear Issei cursing at the man, but she would too if he was stupid enough to stand there. So you're the one that Rainer failed to eliminate. I always knew she was too weak, but I'll soon rectify that mistake. The man strode towards them, uncaring of Issei's words, and she found herself confused. Issei, who is this guy? What's he talking about? He turned to her with a grave expression, and it was a sight that unsettled her, never seeing such a face on the narcoleptic teen. Mirayama, run, whatever you do, just run. He ordered, but she was having none of that. I'm not going to leave you with some psycho. Yes, you are, please do as I say and run. He pleaded with her, and she relented, nodding before she ran from the street. Not so fast. He tossed a spear, piercing the air, and it was about to hit her when Issei stood in front of her and shattered it with a palm strike. Your fight is with me, fallen. Issei glared. A pair of metal gauntlets materialized in his hands. She was shocked when black wings ripped themselves from the man's back, and in his hands was a glowing blue spear. I really can't let the both of you leave now, witnesses and all that. Mirayama, run. I'll take care of him. She turned to Issei for a moment, his face hardened, glaring at the man. She hesitantly moved away from him, fear striking her body as her legs carried her away. But she swallowed the fear down and hid behind a car, watching what they would do. You've got some fight in you, boy, I like that. The name's Donasik, be sure to remember it as I carve it into your body. The winged man lunged forward with his spear, ready to thrust it into Issei's heart, but he ducked to the side, pulling a metal bow staff from the air. No, from a red circle, and Mirayama's eyes boggled at such a sight. Zephyr's run, Vithar's fury. Issei motioned with his hand, and 2 rings of energy circled around him before dissipating in a shower of light. The two did battle, but she saw Issei fighting with much more skill and ferocity than she had ever seen. He batted away all the strikes and returned it twofold. He swung the metal staff into the man's stomach, folding him in two and sending crashing into a car. Issei raced forward, his staff skittering along the pavement, and he was about to cave the man's skull in when he was forced to duck from a thrown dagger, but was rewarded with a sucker punch. The staff fell to the ground, Donasik slashed wildly, and it nicked Issei's arm. Issei snarled, the pain serving to enrage him. He spun on his foot and kicked the fallen in the head. The man carved through the pavement and crashed against a wall. The man growled, tossing a spear in retaliation, but Issei knocked it away. He disappeared in mid-strike, and it left the winged man confused until his body started bouncing all over the place and he was flung into the air where he righted himself. That was a warning. I'm giving you this one chance to walk away from this and I'll forget this happened. Mirayama had never heard the frosty tone that came out of Issei now as he was glaring at the man. At the black-winged angel. You brat. A few dozen light spears blinked into existence behind him. We'll meet again, but consider this my parting gift. The spears shot forward. Issei batted them with ease, but something was coming fast, something sharp, something blue. Squelch. Murayama's eyes widened, staring at the blue spear embedded in her stomach, dumbstruck at how quickly it had happened. The spear dissipated in her hands and she fell back, but she felt strong arms catch her and she saw his eyes. Brown eyes, full of guilt and sorrow, that she reached her hand up to his face. No, Murayama, why didn't you run? He took off his jacket, trying to put pressure on the wound, and she coughed up blood. It hurt, everything hurt. I couldn't leave you, Issei. I don't leave my friends behind. She cracked a smile and a strange sound emerged from his throat, something between a laugh and a sob. You idiot. I would have been fine. His body glowed like a radiant angel and she was so sure that he was. Shit, Murayama, stay with me. Stay with me. Don't die on me. She smiled weakly. She wanted him to smile again. I got you back. Don't die on me now. Remember how you wanted to get stronger. You're gonna beat me one day, right? Her vision was getting hazier and all the lights were so pretty. Tamamo, I need you. A beautiful woman came over. She recognized her as the school's nurse, but there was something fluffy on her head and she tried to reach out to grab it. She's lost too much blood, Issei-kun. Moisture welled up in the corner of her eyes. It was so hard to breathe. I don't want to die, Issei. Those words desperately calling out to him, and he squeezed her hand comfortingly. I'm not gonna let you die. She was fading away, floating in and out of consciousness. A look of distress crossed Tamamo's features. You can't, Issei. I got her into this. I'll pay the price for it as well. Sleep. I'm so sleepy. Her vision darkened and everything was slipping away. Sleep. In the name of Issei Hayadu, I bestow upon you. Tamamo wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead as she finished examining Murayama, whose torso was covered in thick bandages. Murayama laid asleep on Issei's bed, her chest rising and falling evenly. Issei let himself relax. Issei stumbled his way into the living room couch where he collapsed bonelessly on the cushion. Tamamo followed him in a regal manner and she smiled when she saw Issei's new guest take to her uniform. Why is this outfit so small? Rainer pulled at her French-made uniform. The skirt was high, not even reaching her thigh, and her bust threatened to spill out of its small confines. A black choker, with the pendant she was gifted with, was around her neck. Tamamo snorted at her complaint. Like your other outfit was any better. It was a combat outfit. Rainer defended. She was further outraged by Tamamo's laugh. She turned her head to look at Issei. What the hell happened to that asshole? She noted that his uniform was battered. The cuffs had stains of blood and his red shirt did a good job in hiding the fact that there was a lot of blood on him. He yet again did something idiotic that almost got him killed. Tamamo answered. Issei groaned on the couch and she patted him on the head for trying. Rainer frowned, her eyes crinkling in thought. Disappointed that he didn't die, Rainer turned her head away, choosing not to dignify Tamamo's question that with a response. Issei turned on his side, looking Rainer up and down before giving a thumbs up. Nice, Rainer spluttered, and Issei wasn't sure if her reddening face was due to her embarrassment or her rage. Shut up, I'm still pissing blood because of you. To be fair, you did try to kill me, Issei rebutted dryly. Issei brought his hand up to his face, a symbol blinking red on his hand, and he dragged himself to his feet. Well, it was nice seeing you in that outfit, but if you're good for the next few days, I'll see about getting you changed into something more comfortable. So no killing or else, he said, staring pointedly at her choker. She scowled at the reminder. If she tried to harm anyone in the household, the effect wouldn't be pretty. Issei left his not-so-happy maid at his apartment and walked alongside Tamamo. The two were silent as they made their way to the rooftop. Issei could practically feel Tamamo's eyes on him. He wasn't looking forward to that conversation. When Issei opened the door to the rooftop, he saw two familiar faces. Neither of them were smiling. Evening, Achilles, Lai-Hua. He greeted, sitting at his seat. They gave rigid nods back. How was the talk with Rias? Tamamo fired off the first question to him. Issei didn't blink and gave an indifferent shrug. It was informative. Did you think I'd have any reason to be upset? No, Tamamo said. Her ears twitched and she laid a hand on his shoulder. You are angry. Issei averted his eyes away from them. I can't go around picking fights willy-nilly. What about Sato? Achilles snorted with his arms crossed. He doesn't have a sibling who can disintegrate you with a thought. Issei scratched the back of his head. Still, some things you gotta let go. Know when to pick your fights and all that. Even when they want you to die for their own purposes. Issei bit out with gritted teeth. He looked at all of them to see that Achilles and Lai-Hua were still stone-faced. Fine, I'm not happy that Rias tried to use my death for her personal gain. Despite what she was trying to do, I can sympathize with her on some level. You've forgotten the issue, just like that, Achilles said, snapping his fingers. Issei stared between his fingers and he growled. No, I haven't forgiven it and I'm certainly not going to forget it anytime soon. Lai-Hua was looking at him expectantly, hoping to broach a particular topic, namely of the person that was sleeping in Issei's bed. You've got that look on your face, Issei said, without turning his head. What look? Lai-Hua said. She was clenching and unclenching her fist as her lone eye bored into Issei's. Yeah, I want to talk about the shit you did and I'm going to give you hell for it, look, he said, pointing to her blank stare. She continued her stoic expression when he retracted his finger. Issei conceded and sighed. I should have been smarter and eliminated the fallen. You should have been smarter and let us do it. Lihua stressed the words. How much of your life did you give up saving Murayama? Issei looked away, mumbling under his breath. How much? Lihua asked with a glare. A year, he said a little louder, still mumbling. I couldn't hear you over the sound of your footing. Issei growled and shouted. A year? Okay, I gave up a year. Lihua closed her eyes, exhaling through her nose before she took a seat on the couch. She wouldn't say anything. She didn't have to. Achilles would. What? Achilles marched up to Issei, grabbing him by the collar of his shirt. Boss, I know you can be reckless sometimes, but this is beyond that. This is stupid. You could have called any one of us and we could have beat the feather bastard for you. Well, what if I didn't want that? What if I wanted to take care of the problem myself? What if I don't want to be weak anymore? Issei's voice rose with each question until he was shouting it in Achilles' face. He gritted his teeth as he grabbed Achilles' own shirt. The blood was pounding in his ears now and all he could see was red. Achilles stared him down with a hardened resolve. Issei, boys. Tamamo's slender hand was on Issei's shoulder and he turned with a snarl. His brown eyes exuded power. Until he saw Tamamo's face. Tamamo's eyes, there wasn't fire in them but warmth. Where he expected anger, there was kindness. Issei let Achilles go and collapsed back onto the seat. Tamamo didn't raise her voice and she emitted an aura of calmness over them. What's done is done. We have to be thankful that Murayama is alive right now. Sorry, Issei muttered. Was he sorry for the fact that he let his emotions get to him? Maybe. Was he sorry for the fact that even though he had the power, he still couldn't stop someone from getting hurt? Definitely. But what he was most sorry about was that he had let his team down. The people who would go to hell and back for him and even storm heaven if their leader kicked the bucket early. 'Cause that's who they were. His crew. The ones he could rely on and yet didn't. Achilles crossed his arms and stood in front of him. Issei, we're here to pick up the slack but you're strong too. You're the boss. Everyone recognizes it. Hell, some of the girls at the academy are catching on. What? Eika, Murayama, that Ria's chick and even Lihua knows something's going on between you and Sona. Achilles said with conviction. So don't say that you're weak. That ain't the boss talking. I refuse to recognize that person. The real boss would just take any situation head on with a fearless smile. Issei was quiet at his friend's declaration. He didn't deserve them. Any of them. Got him. There were FC King tears in his eyes. That's not me anymore. No, it's not. But we'll be waiting for when he comes back. The real Issei, Lihua said. Getting off the couch, she turned her head to Issei, a frown on her face. Because it's pathetic seeing you like this. Achilles followed, muttering. We really need you, boss. Achilles and Lihua left Issei and Tamamo on the rooftop. Tamamo stood by next to Issei who stared morosely at the vacant seats. Are you disappointed as well? Issei couldn't look in her direction without feeling the self-loathing for himself. Tamamo's slender fingers slid under Issei's chin and gently tilted his head up. The sight of an exhausted boy crushed her heart. She couldn't fathom the pain that he felt, the decision that he had to make that day. But she knew that he loved her very much. He would give it up for her. I know why you gave up being a hero and I also know deep down that you can't fight that instinct of being one. Issei didn't say anything, letting the silence fill the gap between them. She embraced his head, stroking his hair, and he whispered, I can't leave her. I'm all she's got. I'm her big brother. I know. Tamamo whispered back sadly. She felt Issei's hot tears on her. She had to be strong for them. She had to because she knew that he would give up being a hero for Olivia's sake. And that's okay. Murayama blearily opened her eyes to the sight of an unfamiliar room. She yawned into her mouth and was taken aback at the miffed woman who had an obviously fake smile on her face. The French-made uniform was a little jarring. How are you, today, mistress? Rainer said with gritted teeth as if the words themselves were a bitter pill to swallow. Murayama didn't know what to really do or say in this situation, but the more time passed, the more angrier the woman appeared to get at her lack of response. I'm fine, thanks. Good. The Rainer paused and she shouted outside the door. Do I have to say it? Yes, came the echoic response. TheWhatifguy, sorry I threw up in my mouth a little there. Rainer said, coughing into her hand. The master will see you now. Tamamo opened the door with a flourish, an all-too-cheeky grin on her face, and Issei peeked at them through his fingers with an exasperated sigh. Thank you, Rachin. You can go now, Tamamo said. She directed her sweet smile on her face as the maid fumed at her nickname. Rachin growled and started cursing underneath her breath about dumb foxes. Tamamo laughed, the insult not fazing her in the least, and she smacked the unruly servant's bottom. Rainer yelped and her glare doubled. No foul language in this household, Tamamo said with an admonishing wave, with a mortified Rainer quickly vacating the room. Issei was trying his hardest not to laugh at this point. He almost felt sorry and wanted to intervene, but he wasn't going to throw himself under the bus anytime soon. Issei, I'm confused. What happened? Why is Tamamo-sensei here? And Murayama asked before she looked down at herself, the thick bandages covering her torso, and realized that she was essentially naked. Kaya, where are my clothes? It's all right, calm down, he said, reaching out to pat her on the shoulder. She flinched at the near contact. He frowned before retracting his hand. Do you remember anything from last night? I remembered that we went out for dinner, you drove me, and there was this man. He had black wings and you both fought, she said. And I died. No, you were dying but I saved you. How am I alive? Who was that guy? Magic. I used magic to save you, but it came at a cost, as all spells do. The man that you saw was a fallen angel. He's part of a race in the Judeo-Christian religion. They're one of the many races that inhabit this world. We have the normal world and the supernatural world, where gods, monsters, and other supernatural species live. That sounds crazy. It's unbelievable. Tamamo stepped forward, allowing her fox features to be seen in their full glory, the ears twitching on her head and the 9 tails behind her swaying back and forth. Still unbelievable, Issei said rhetorically. Murayama's response was her gaping mouth as she stared at her foxy school nurse. How is this possible? The world is a lot crazier than you think, you just gotta go with the flow and move on, Issei said. Murayama patted the area where she was stabbed. She could still feel the lingering pain, the hole that the man had carved through her torso. Yet, she was here and out there was a more dangerous world than she could have ever imagined. She didn't know whether to be awe or in terror. Issei inched forward, quietly asking, "Do you want to know more? If you don't, then we can forget this ever happened. But if you want to, then I will tell you and I will make you stronger so that you won't fall again." Murayama stared at her hands. She balled them into her fists and Issei could see the resolve in her eyes. "I do." Murayama couldn't believe the words coming from Issei's mouth when he explained everything about the fight from last night. Fallen angels, devils, none of it made sense, but the proof was there when the school nurse had revealed herself to be the freaking Tamamo no Mi. When Eika had come over for breakfast with Issei and nonchalantly revealed that she was actually a half-vampire, half-succubus, she was left with one thought. That explained so much. So here she was, walking with Issei and Eika, a 1,000-yard stare on her face that she only snapped out of once they walked past the school gate. "Oi, we're here. Look, just meet me after school and I'll work something out so you don't have to worry about anyone else killing you." Issei rubbed the back of his head and she nodded dumbly, taking a step forward before being dragged away by an exuberant Cadace who was whispering at 1,000,000 miles per hour and asking questions on why she was walking with Issei. Issei watched as Murayama got dragged to her group of friends who were gesturing wildly in his direction, and he scratched his head, puzzled at their behavior. He wasn't that bad, was he? He didn't have time to dwell on this for long before he was blindsided by Matsuda and Madohama, who began dragging him away. They turned to Eika. "Excuse us for a moment, we just need to have a quick chat with a friend." They quickly ran off before she could even utter a single word of protest. "How the hell did you get the freaking captain of the kendo club to walk with you?" Matsuda cried indignantly, surrounding him by the wall. "What did you do? Did you bribe her, hypnotize her, blackmail her?" Madohama joined in on the interrogation, but Issei's glare silenced whatever else they were going to say. "What the hell's gotten into the both of you? I met her on the way to school and we got to talking. What's the big deal?" They both spluttered in vexation at Issei's words. "Big deal? Dude, do you know how much this could mean for us? We get access to peep at girls whenever we want, if you're laying the foundations for a good relationship." Matsuda swept his arm around Issei's neck. Issei regarded them with a flat look. "What do you mean relationship?" Madohama patted Issei on the shoulder. Don't think we didn't miss the glazed-over look in her eyes. He had to groan at that misunderstanding, and the urge to slap them was taking remarkable restraint on his part. "Look, I'm not helping you spy on girls just so you can look at some bubs. But they are glorious BRSTS, big, round and perky with such amazing nipples that I want to stuff my face in them." Madohama yelled proudly. A couple of girls walked by looking at them with loathing. It's those guys, talking about it so openly. Shameful, so awful. I mean, can you at least teach us how to get a girlfriend?" Matsuda coughed into his hand. Issei sighed at the hopelessness of these two. "Just tone it down with the perversions. Appreciation." Matsuda interjected before being stopped by the blank stare from Issei. "Continue, and treat girls with the respect that they deserve. If you actually get to point when you go on an actual date, be nice, be yourself but not yourself. Do you get what I mean?" They nodded, accepting the answer. "Thank you so much, Issei. Surely, your words of wisdom will help us in our dream to attain a harem." Issei tried his best to sink into the ground because he did not want to deal with all the glares from the Pharisec right now. He karate up both of their heads when they continued with their overzealous worshipping. "What did I say before about shouting your dreams?" Issei growled. His displeasure at having his reputation cemented by these idiots was making him regret his decision to help them. "Not to," they murmured before giggling madly to themselves. Matsuda pulled out a DVD with the case showing various girls in erotic positions and various states of undress. Well, I just got the newly released Tropical Kiss, and I'm so excited to watch it." "Say, Issei, do you want to join us?" No, you guys can jerk each other off. I've got some business to take care of after school." He walked back to Eika, who regarded him with a raised eyebrow. What did they want to talk about? Eika asked, and Issei stopped her before the topic could gain any traction lest he suffer under more innuendos. "Let's not go there." He looked up and spotted Riaz on the second floor peering down at him. He slipped back into his disinterested mask. "So where are we going?" Issei asked with a yawn, as Eika and Murayama trailed behind him. Issei had been invited personally by Riaz to deal with a stray devil, partly to make amends for manipulating him the way that she did, and partly to show how the evil pieces worked. She had brought her peerage consisting of Akino, Kiba, and Kaneko. Murayama was trying and failing to hold back from squealing at seeing the prince so close to her. Riaz had asked why he wanted to bring Murayama, and he responded that the threat of the rogue fallen had revealed the supernatural world to her, to which she mentally kicked herself for failing in her duty to protect her territory. We're going to be dealing with someone who's been naughty. Akino answered, and Issei swore that there was something else in her voice when she said that. The group were standing before a dilapidated building, one you would suspect would make a great filming location for a cheesy horror movie or a hideout for kids to play pretend. But this place oozed a sense of dread that intimidated many who walked by. However, to Rias, it was sign that they were in the right place. She turned to the confused girls to explain why they were there. We received an order from the Archduke that the stray devil visor was in this area, and as I'm the devil charged with this territory, it is my job to track down and eliminate it. Noticing Issei's disinterested expression, she further explained, "This will give me the opportunity to show you the traits that my servants have." Issei stroked his chin. This will be an educational experience for them then. Quite. Seeing the girl's confusion, Rias continued. To explain why my servants have certain traits that go along with their powers, I must explain the history of my kind. There was a conflict, a war between three factions, the devils, the fallen, and the angels. All three were led by the four Satans, the governor, general, and god respectively. They fought for eons and each of them were evenly matched with one another. However, they all ended up losing most of their troops and the war ended centuries ago in a stalemate. Akino continued after her red-haired president. Now, the devils were no exceptions to this and most of their troops fell in battle. Some of the 72 pillars have been wiped to extinction due to this war, which is why we can no longer form any new armies and have turned to an alternate method. She held a serene smile. Even though a ceasefire has been issued, there has been tension between the three factions and a system was devised to replenish our numbers. Rias held her hand up and a bishop chess piece floated above her palm. This is the evil piece system. High-ranking devils are gifted with their evil pieces and it allows us to reincarnate any being to become a devil. It was modeled after the human game of chess and we have come to use those traits for our devil servants. The master of the peerage is given the rank of king, which is me. Now, as you know, there are different pieces such as the queen, rook, bishop, knight, and pawn, each with their unique traits. Although, we can't make an army, a small group of devils with a massive boost in power compensates for that number. This system was created in the past and has become popular amongst devils with their peerages as a way of settling conflict and a form of entertainment. Popular how? Eika asked, more than intrigued that a whole other race of beings invented something like that. While Eika did have a basic knowledge of the supernatural world, she was fascinated to learn more about other races and their history. Her mother wasn't particularly forthcoming on her own heritage. Well, everyone started to compete against each other. Some would compare the strength of their pieces. My bishop is stronger, or my pawn can take down your knight. High-class devils would start to play a game like chess using our servants, which we called the rating game. As its popularity has continued to grow, it has become a competitive sport with tournaments. Eika and Murayama were amazed at her explanation, but Issei's face held a dark expression. The more Issei listened to Ria's explanation of the evil pieces, the more that he wanted to start destroying things. Pieces, servants, objects. They're people too, Issei thought cynically. Ria strode forward past the threshold with the group and a heavy atmosphere flooded the room. Murayama almost dropped down to her knees at the killing intent being directed to her when it stopped. Kiba stood in front of her, giving her his calm, refreshing smile that enchanted many girls, and she was no exception. A voice emanated from the crevices of the darkened room. Now what could that smell be? It is absolutely disgusting. Yet I can also smell something delicious. Is it sweet or bitter? Emerging from the shadows was a woman. She was a beauty from her waist up, naked with her bare BRSTS revealed to the world. Her beauty ended when they saw her bottom half, a monstrous centaur with claws and teeth. Let's hear, Kaneko said. Thank you, Kaneko, Issei said dryly as she pointed out the giant monster that was literally standing in the middle of the room. Stray devil, visor. You have abandoned your master and have let your powers run rampant. You will face judgment for your sins. In the name of the Gremmery, I will destroy you. The woman smirked at her with a half-lidded gaze. What an impudent little brat you are. Shall I dye all of you in bright red, like that hair of yours? She began fondling her BRSTS, laughing manically as Murayama stood there in disgust. Meanwhile, Eika shifted over to Issei and covered his eyes with her hand. Are you sure this is a stray devil and not a weird exhibitionist? Issei commented and slapped Eika's hand away. The magical circles that appeared around the stray devil's nipples shot a yellow beam towards them. Everyone dodged from the attack except for Issei, who just leaned down. Hey, 500 yen. He surveyed the wall behind him, which was slowly trickling down with acid. Do succubi have AC? No, Eika said definitively, and he pouted before shuffling over to where Rias was, backflipping from another glob. Watch closely, Kiba-kun. Kiba's hand hovered over his sword before disappearing before them. Wow, he's fast. Murayama gushed in awe. Yuuto's position is that of a knight, meaning that his speciality is speed. He was under the monster and with 2 swipes, the arms fell off with a heavy thunk. Visor screeched in agony as blood sprayed from her stumps. Kaneko stepped forward. Visor transformed once more, her beautiful appearance shifted, her teeth growing longer and the slit in the middle of her legs grew massive jaws that enveloped Kaneko in one bite. That is one monster vagina. Issei's comment earned him a slap from both Eika and Murayama. The jaws were slowly being pried open by the diminutive girl, although her uniform was in tatters, exposing her bra and panties. Kaneko is my rook, her speciality is strength. The little girl's fist slammed into Visor's torso, and she flew back with tremendous force, shattering a pillar. Aquino, Rias called out. The vice president stalked forward towards the grounded devil with a tranquil smile. Ara, whatever should I do with you, I wonder? Something in Aquino's tone sent warning bells ringing in Issei's head as he narrowed his eyes at her deceptively sweet voice. Issei spotted a clawed arm move from the rubble. He watched as it flew towards Rias, its sharp nails ready to tear out her delicate throat. He swiped it from the air and used it to scratch at an itch on his back. That was poor spatial awareness, you should work on that. Rias stared in bewilderment before he casually tossed the hand behind him, bursting into a ball of fire. Be aware at all times. Those who try to lay a hand on my president will be punished. Lightning arced between Aquino's fingertips. Aquino is my queen, she has the traits of all my pieces, but her speciality is magic. Oh my, you still look alive. I'll have to fix that, won't I? A beam of lightning struck Visor, electrocuting the stray devil who screamed in agony. Also, she's the ultimate sadist. The fact that she said this with a smile as Aquino continued to light up the enemy like a Christmas tree made Miriama gulp at seeing one of her Onisama's darker side. Eika looked on curiously, a hand on her chin. Well, I never thought I would find a kindred spirit. Issei's head whipped towards her, very much concerned about the possibility of two Eikas in the world, and asked, what was that? Nothing, Eika said in a sing-song voice. Rias held out her hand in front of Aquino. That will do, Aquino. Aquino seemed sullen that she couldn't get to continue to play with her new toy and cupped her cheek mournfully. The sadistic smile was still there, but she acquiesced to Ria's order. Rias walked towards the charred and blackened body of Visor, who moaned pitifully. Any last words, Visor? Kill me, she said simply, wanting the pain to end. Very well. A ball of red energy coalesced in her hand, hovering over her palm, before it flew forward, enveloping Visor. Everyone watched as the woman disintegrated before their very eyes. The only evidence that she had been alive at some point were the splatters of blood on the floor. That concludes the demonstration of our roles. Rias's actions on how she so casually wiped the monster from existence shocked Miriama to the core. She had some preconceived notions that devils would take your soul in a contract, but here she was finding out that they protected the town from supernatural beings. Even beings from their own race. Issei swept his eyes over to Rias and her peerage, who looked at him with expectant gazes, and he struggled to find the words to conclude his thoughts. It was interesting. Rias wasn't convinced that he entirely telling the truth, but let him be. Pursuing that line of questioning would be exhausting, and she didn't need that right this minute. So she nodded, accepting his answer. Well, it's been fun, but tonight's a school night. I guess we'll bid you adieu. He waved, casually strolling out of the building, much to Rias and her peerage's bewilderment at his behavior. I don't think I've seen that reaction before, Rias said dumbly, perplexed at Issei's casual walking out. Whistling as Issei hopped down the stairs to the basement of the apartment complex, he found Rainer, Eika, and Miriama waiting for him. Rainer looked at the dusty basement in disgust before she sniffed irritably. Eika seemed to have found her amusement by mercilessly teasing Miriama, evident by her reddening face. Eika, stop teasing Miriama, I'm pretty sure all the blood rushing to her head isn't healthy for her. Eika still held the cheeky grin and directed her perverted leer towards Issei. No, Eika, bad. Awa, you're always ruining my fun. I'm doing my job to protect Earth from the evil forces of Eika. She stuck her tongue out in a childish rebuttal. Issei rolled his eyes before pulling out a silver key from his pocket. He jabbed it into the oak door in the center of the wall. The key nestled in the lock, and Issei turned. Opening the door, they were greeted to the sight of a desolate, brown, craggy land that was dotted with dead trees. Raina quickly stripped off her uniform and transformed into her true form the BDSM clothing, while Eika had taken to wearing a black sports bra and some shorts. Miriama was hesitant in changing, but Issei pointedly turned away while he handed her the training clothes. She muttered a quick thanks. It was amazing that Issei's composure didn't break when Eika tried to distract him with her warm-up stretches. He knew that puberty had been hitting Eika quite nicely, by her still developing bust and her shapely rear. She was alluring, that was for sure, but he didn't let her know that. Issei and Laihua had been playing this game of cat and mouse for the last year, and he didn't want to lose at this point. All right, I'm going to be training you three to be the very best at kicking ass. He clapped his hands together, getting their attention. By the end of this month, you will be stronger, faster, deadlier. But first things first, what the hell are you wearing, Rainier? It's my combat outfit, she said, only to see him raise an eyebrow in response. Yeah, if the combat zone was the dungeon and the enemy was strapped with his arms and legs to the bed, then I could definitely see you defeating someone in that. Hey, this outfit works. It distracts the guys while I shove my spear into their chest. Doesn't really do much if your opponent is better than you and could capture you. By then you already dressed yourself for the part of what he's going to do to you. Rainier scowled fiercely at his verbal assault but saw something flash across his eyes. Something that she saw herself when she looked in the mirror and dropped the matter. A runic circle flared to life before a pair of shorts and a shirt fell into Issei's hand. He tossed them to Rainier, who grumbled, changing into the new outfit. One more thing, Issei tossed all of them a blank shogi tile. Eika held the piece between her fingers. What is this? If I'm going to train you all, then you need to have that at all times. It's to help gauge your power. They watched the tile shatter into particles before it entered their bodies. A warmth started to spread throughout them and they felt invigorated by the rush of energy. Anyway, I will be having my lovely assistants help me today. Tamamo appeared wearing her traditional outfit and was smiling rather eerily at Rainier. Achilles shot up from behind a boulder and landed in front of them in a plume of smoke and shouted, I am here. We know, everyone said flatly. What kind of training are we going to be doing? Rainier said uneasily as a fireball appeared in front of Tamamo. Survival training, Issei said simply before he sat up on a boulder. Achilles summoned a javelin in his hand. A maniacal grin spread over his face as he swept his gaze over to the slightly frightened girls, before he zeroed in on Murayama. Start running. A bead of sweat fell down Eika's head, and she blanched when she realized Murayama was a good 100 meters in the opposite direction of Achilles. Rainier took to the air hoping that it would give her an advantage before she was pelted by rocks, and she turned her annoyed gaze at Issei. Stay on the earth, learn how to dodge on steady ground first. Rainier clicked her teeth in irritation, landing on the ground before being struck by a fireball. I didn't say stop dodging. She cursed inwardly when she had to twist her body from a hail of fireballs from Tamamo, who continued to chase after her with a frightening smile. Po, why are you saying that? Rainier cried out and she whipped her head around to see something that petrified her. Tamamo's face was distorted, her face lengthened and stretched and her mouth looked like a black Inkai void. Po, Kaya. Rainier sagged to the ground, foam coming out of her mouth as the air in front of Tamamo's face shifted before her features were back to normal. Murayama thought that her training would be able to help her dodge more easily. She had a good distance between her and Achilles. There was no way that he cowl. SHPPT. The tip of his javelin was embedded into the ground in front of her and her legs gave out at her near death. She turned back to see him waving at her. If he had aimed a little lower than her head would have been. What are you waiting for? Run, Forrest, run. Achilles yelled. Murayama tearfully thought that maybe it wasn't too late to go back. She tried to climb to her feet but to her horror found the red head was standing right in front of her. Man, I thought you'd be faster. Achilles dismissed the spear in the ground and summoned a Xiphos to his hand. He scratched his head thoughtfully. Maybe I'm not doing this right. He cast a sign with his fingers and a hockey mask appeared in his hand. Ah, that's much better. Murayama screamed in terror as she ran away from Achilles who was madly laughing and swinging his sword at her. The small taps to her shoulders and elbows served to inspire Murayama to run faster. Eika stared. Issei stared back. So am I exempt from this survival training? Eika asked, trying not to let her voice crack at hearing the other girl's luck. Issei raised a hand in the air before giving the thumbs up and he looked at something in the distance. Oi, what does that mean? Issei signed with his hands again and stopped before directing his gaze back to her. Eika was shivering on the spot when she saw the blank stare and her voice trembled. Issei, you're freaking me out. This is payback for teaching Olivia a bad word before. He stated simply. What bad word? You mean mana. BACRACK. A bullet whizzed past Eika and she raised her fingers to her cheek to realize blood was leaking out. Issei continued on, ignoring the fact that Eika was now looking frantically at where the sharpshooter was. Would you like to play a game of hide and seek? Issei asked. Eika frantically shook her head while Issei interpreted it differently by vigorously nodding along. He raised 2 thumbs up. Another shot rang out and Eika decided that hiding was priority number 1. She would get Issei back later. Help! She screamed. Out on top of a plateau in the distance was Lai Hua, her belly to the ground and her lone eye through the scope of her sniper rifle. Despite Eika's impressive speed and her ability to hide in shadows, that still wasn't good enough. She sighed in bliss. I do love a moving target. Issei looked down at the girls who were panting on the floor. He blew on a steaming cup of ramen and let out a breath, feeling that the last few hours of training was cathartic in some way. Rainier alternated between screaming in terror or yelling abuse at him. Eika was desperate to find a good hiding place and kept muttering she knows. Murayama had questioned her sanity involuntarily joining in this horror fest. U.S. sadistic ass. Rainier groaned, rubbing at the bruises as she tried to sit herself up to breathe easier. She turned to meet her tormentor who slurped some noodles into his mouth before he directed his chopsticks at her. Sorry, couldn't hear that. Did you say you want to continue training? She paled instantly and shook her head. I think they did very well for their first day of training. Tamamo said airily, bringing a tray of tea over to him. Issei pondered. He would have a lot of work to do if he were to train them to meet his standards, but he was impressed with their potential. Rainier, while she was a low-level angel with only a single pair of wings, was learning quickly and adapted to her situation far better than he had expected. Although the bruises attested to her efforts and he was pleased that she was trying to improve herself. She was every myth and urban legend. Rainier complained to Eika. Eika, thanks to her vampire and succubus heritage, had shown remarkable speed, being able to nimbly dodge, duck and weave out of the gunfire. Lai Hua took this as a personal challenge and started wondering how close she could get to hitting Eika without harming her. Eika developed a healthy amount of fear for Lai Hua that day. Murayama was beginning to show the aptitude of a great swordsman. Thinking fast on her feet, her agility certainly was nothing to scoff at. He had to give credit to the captain of the kendo club. She took her training very seriously, and Issei was glad to see the determination in her eyes. At least you didn't have a psychotic killer chasing after you, Murayama panted. Sometime during the training session, all of them had ended up running together and a strange camaraderie had formed between the three for their mutual loathing of their tormentors. All right, that was a good warm-up, now we can start training. All of their eyes bugged out. Was he serious? They could barely keep up before. Rainer looked back at Issei and noticed as he began to smirk before devolving into full-blown, uproarious laughter. They all glowered darkly at him, but that just further fueled his howls of laughter as he rolled on the ground clutching his stomach. You prick, Rainer said. All right, Achilles, Lai Hua, you guys can spar now. Achilles whooped. He twisted his hands into a sign and his uniform was replaced by armor. The hockey mask was gone and he had a serious expression as he turned to regard Lai Hua. Everyone saw how his bronze armor gleamed, covering his chest, arms, and legs. On his back was a bronze shield, and Murayama recognized the javelin that he used was there as well. Around his waist was a leather loincloth, his trusty ziphos attached by his hip, and underneath he wore a pair of survivor trousers. Achilles cracked his neck in anticipation. You're still wearing that skirt. Lai Hua smirked at his indignant expression. Achilles rebuffed her comment. I'm wearing pants too, you know. Doesn't stop the fact that you're still wearing a skirt. Lai Hua snapped her fingers and her uniform changed to a full bodysuit that conformed to every curve of her body. The zipper was at the top of her neck and she fixed up her vest, which carried her ammunition and other military paraphernalia. On her back was something that couldn't be described as a sniper rifle, as it was more akin to a cannon by its size. A handgun was holstered to her side. She looked ready to go to war. Show off, Achilles jeered. Lick my clit. Lai Hua sniped back. Okay, save the aggression for the fight. Now, let's shake hands and get this spar started, Issei called out. He led the audience to the side where he had been sitting, while Tamamo began to set up a barrier around the two fighters. Achilles and Lai Hua marched up to each other, both of them shaking the other's hand. Everyone could see that them shaking hands was still a contest, as it looked like they were trying to force each other to submit. Good luck, you're gonna need all of it, Achilles said, a fake smile on his face. HMPH, too bad for you, I've got skill on my side too. Lai Hua smirked and the two let go, going in opposite directions. Is this a demonstration or are we going all out? Lai Hua said, her eyes not leaving Achilles as they glared at each other. A demonstration. Let's go with hand-to-hand for now, Issei said. With a flick of the combatants' wrists, they dismissed their weapons in flash of light. Begin. Achilles pounced forward with an ecstatic grin and his forearm crashed against Lai Hua. Her arms were crossed to guard herself as she dug her foot into the ground to stop from skidding back. She hated fighting hand-to-hand with him. Even now her arms stung from the hit, and from the ever-widening smile on Achilles' face, he knew that it had hurt her. Achilles followed up with an uppercut and Lai Hua backed up before her leg slammed into his arm. You've gotten slower, he said, before grabbing her outstretched leg. Lai Hua nimbly spun with her other foot and kicked Achilles in the head, the blow rattling him enough that he released his grip on her leg. Quickly, before he could gain his breath, Lai Hua swiftly followed through with a flying kick. Achilles sensed the incoming attack, sidestepped the attack, but she was already on him. She attacked at his weak spots, going for the throat, eyes, and testicles. While Achilles may have had the power and speed in his moves, Lai Hua employed techniques and used every dirty trick in the book. She was a mercenary, not a samurai. Achilles saw his moment and his hand shot forward, grabbing Lai Hua by the throat. She instinctively clawed at his hand before he lifted her high in the air and her back slammed against the ground. The audience from the side winced for the woman. They could practically feel their backs ache from that move. Taking advantage of the opening, he dragged her across the field, carving a trench into the ground, and hurled Lai Hua against a boulder. She felt her lungs burn from all the air leaving her, and Achilles' knee crashed into her solar plexus, leaving her winded again as she curled to the ground. Hey, don't tell me that's all you got. He didn't get to finish before Lai Hua's forehead crashed against his nose with the sound of broken cartilage motivating her to keep making him hurt. She grabbed Achilles by the back of his neck and with a roar tossed him across the field. He recovered in midair and gracefully landed on his feet. Blood leaked down his face and he reached up to lick it. That's more like it. Lai Hua couldn't help the smile that split her lips. Issei cupped his hands together and stood from his seat. All right, let's bring out the weapons. Achilles raised his hands and his ziphos and shield fell into his grasp. His foot came forward and he held his ziphos behind his shield. Lai Hua summoned her own weapons, a tomahawk and a serrated knife, and she lowered her stance closer to the ground. She held the tomahawk in her right hand and the serrated knife in a reverse grip with her left. The audience was amazed at the weapons they were bringing out. For the girls, they only knew the two captains of the school had an intense rivalry with each other, but to see them battle it out and using skills that far exceeded their own, it was enlightening to say the least. Achilles and Lai Hua clashed in a deadly dance. A whirlwind of blades, steel against bronze, and the sheer stubbornness between mercenary and warrior was heating up. Each blow they struck would have killed an ordinary man. Each parry was meant to break the blade that landed the hit, and you would think those two were on even ground. But Lai Hua was not a close combat fighter. Sure, she held her ground admirably against someone like Achilles, but that's not where her speciality lied. Even now, Achilles had been controlling the fight up with him being on the offensive. Lai-Hua was slowly giving ground, but she had patience. A plan formed in her mind and she disengaged from Achilles. A rush of air left Achilles' nose and he got back into his combat stance, legs spread wide and his ziphos and shield ready to attack and defend. Lai-Hua was puffing mildly, but she managed to get her own breathing under control. She darted forward and jumped into the air with a raised leg. Achilles narrowed his eyes at the move. Why would she perform something that left her wide open? He raised his ziphos to meet her when she threw her knife at him. He hastily aborted the attack and raised his shield. But that was exactly what Lai-Hua needed. Achilles realized his mistake when he felt her full weight on his shield. He sensed the surge of magic in her legs. Hey, she's using magic. Achilles yelled over to Issei, who stroked his chin thoughtfully. Yeah, you can use magic now, why not? FCKU. Thank you. Lai-Hua kicked off from Achilles' shield and propelled herself far from him, tossing a smoke bomb his way. The sniper rifle appeared in her hand, the barrel longer than she was tall. A devious smile spread across her face while Achilles was still looking in the other direction from where she was. Damn it, where the hell did she go? Achilles scratched his head, the smoke lingering and distorting his vision. Eika turned to Issei as they saw Lai-Hua set up her rifle on top of a plateau. What kind of gun is that? She likes to call it the Doomsday Rifle. Why, bang! Achilles' head snapped forward from the impact of the bullet and he sank to the ground. Everyone watched with bated breath to see if he would get up. Achilles lifted an arm up, a solitary finger raised, and cracked his neck. Good thing that I'm so hard-headed. Achilles grunted to himself. A ring of magic shattered and he spat on the ground. He stood up with the help of his summoned javelin. So glad I know some protection magic. The bullet slammed against his shield, the force pushing him back, and he dug his spear into the ground to stop from moving any further. There were a few seconds of dead silence before Achilles quickly chanted to himself. He holstered his shield, and his hand let go of his javelin. Hermes rush, Atlas burden. Lai-Hua looked down at her scope to see Achilles stand, with his arms wide open, as if to say take your best shot. She fired once and he tilted his head to the side. The bullet missing him by a couple of inches, but the smirk that he wore said that he saw it coming a mile away. Now, who's showing off? Lai-Hua said, under her breath. A green film of energy surrounded her before multiple copies of her shot out and ran to their own vantage points. She continued to fire at him and he weaved through each bullet. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. A bullet whizzed by from a different direction and his eyes spotted a clone of Lai-Hua firing at him. Is he singing? Murielma asked. Helps him concentrate apparently, Tamamo said with a shrug. 10 other clones materialized forming a circle and fired, their hands pulling back the bolt as fast as they fired. Oh lord, Lai-Hua's clones disappeared and the green energy around her intensified. 3 magic circles appeared in front of the cannon that Lai-Hua wielded and 2 legs shot off from the underside of her rifle as it embedded itself into the ground. Her finger hovered over the trigger. Bye-bye. An explosion resounded throughout the grounds and everyone looked on in worry to see if Achilles had survived, but Issei smirked. The cloud settled and Achilles was still standing, though his armor was a little worn and his shield sported a huge dent. Achilles looked down at his damaged shield and tossed it to the side before flipping his javelin in his hand. I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Achilles began to walk, then he broke into a sprint before his arm shot out and the javelin soared through the air. Lai-Hua spotted the javelin heading towards her and whispered underneath her breath. Oh lord. Lai-Hua cast a spell underneath her feet, teleporting far away. The moment Achilles' javelin touched ground, a shockwave rocked everybody off their feet. Once they got up, they saw a huge plume rise up from where Lai-Hua was sniping from. What the hell is wrong with them? Murielma screamed as she got back up. Rainer looked at the 2 fighters and realized that this was what Azazel meant by watching out for the wild cards. They had the power and skill to destroy her easily. What other tricks did they have up their sleeves? The fact that they looked up to Issei as their leader was mind-boggling. How could they follow someone who could barely beat her? You're confused. Tamamo spoke up beside her as she continued to watch the pair fight with their bladed weapons. Rainer frowned. About what? About why they would follow him. Tamamo nodded her head towards Issei. He's not that impressive. Yufifufu, and what would that make you? Rainer's stink eye went unnoticed by Tamamo. Issei is not weak because he is. An explosion rang out in the distance as Issei cheered his 2 friends on. Tamamo smiled ruefully. He's weak because he chooses to be. Is it wrong to be kind? Asia Argento had pondered the question when she had left Europe, excommunicated from the church. She had been praised by them, they had called her the Holy Priestess, and she had thanked God for giving her the gift to help people, to heal the sick and the people in pain. Until one day, she had helped him, a devil, but she had smiled and used her power to heal him. When they found out what she had done, all the praises turned to scorn. A gift that can heal a devil is blasphemous. They said, her kindness, her compassion was rewarded with pain and betrayal. Is it wrong to feel joy and sorrow? She was far out of her comfort zone. She had lived a life devoting herself to serving God and healing the sick with her power, but she had always wished to know what it was like to be the people she saw, who laughed and cried. To simply be like them instead of being the holy priestess, and a cynical thought entered her mind for a moment. Now I have all the time in the world to be normal. But her train of thought was interrupted when she felt a droplet of rain splash on her face, and she realized that the clouds had darkened, the gray cast over the sky as more droplets fell. She stood there in the rain, her suitcase clutched tightly in one hand as she closed her eyes and simply lost herself in the cascade of water. Her clothes were completely soaked at this point, but she found that the rain was liberating, in a way. Many would say that the rain was quite sad, that it was a reminder of all the misfortune in your life, but the rain was there for the people who needed it to express their sorrows, even when their tears had dried up long ago, or to mask her tears. She loved the rain, the way that it poured down on her, drenched her. It was washing away her past, her faults, and absolving her of her sins. She noticed that her body had stopped being pelted by the rain and saw a hand holding an umbrella over her. She traced that hand to an arm and eventually to the face of a handsome brown-haired boy who smiled warmly at her. He was dressed in a long coat and he kept his eyes on her. She wanted to look away, but he was mesmerizing. "You're gonna catch a cold if you stay out here like that." His voice hummed in contentment as he stared out towards the emptiness, the never-ending rain. "But it is something to admire, you know, the rain." She felt her heart beat faster. Standing closely to this angel, the thunderous roar dulled the white noise as she focused on his words. If we fall in the mud, the rain would be there to wash it away, purifying us, leaving us cleansed and whole again. The rain moves from drizzling to torrential. You think to yourself that things will always be like this, that it will never get better, and it will only continue to get worse. The pounding of her heart drowned out the rain, and his eyes, so warm and full of compassion, stared deeply into her own. She felt her mood lift up, her sadness being washed away by his smile like the water down a storm drain. Even though the rain can be quite somber to many, it's necessary for us to have these sad times because it makes the good times all the more precious. He unclasped the long coat and brought it over her shoulders. "Come on, this will warm you up." She nodded shyly, accepting it. "Thank you, I'm just going through a trial from God," she trailed, embarrassed that she didn't ask for his name, but he returned it with a soft smile on his lips. "Oh, you're a sister of the cloth." She shuffled nervously on the spot, not sure how to answer that she was excommunicated from the church, as the topic was still too sore to mention in front of a stranger, albeit a handsome one. No, she had to keep impure thoughts out of her mind. "Is it all right if you help me find the church in this town?" she asked quietly, and the warm smile was there again, making her heart beat and her face flush. "As you wish." Asia never knew the moment she took his hand, her life would irrevocably change. Donasik groaned as he craned his neck, Asia's twilight healing restoring him back to full health. "Damn, that brat." He slammed his fist down on the pew. Asia flinched and kept her hands hovered over him. Donasik regarded the weakling with disdain. "Leave." Asia bowed and left Donasik to himself. Donasik had to remind himself that Cockabeel had graced him with an important task. Failure was not something that he wanted. No, he would succeed in this. He needed the power to do so in order to climb higher within the organization. Higher than Rainier, and even, he thought with cruel ambition, higher than Cockabeel himself. Much as Donasik wanted to kill the pest that beat him, he had to concede that he was a decent fighter that could batter him so easily and with sheer ruthlessness. He was so lost in thought, he didn't notice a figure slink out of the shadows and hover high above him on a stone gargoyle. A cloaked figure sat with one leg swinging out. "You fallen are always so short-sighted, aren't you?" the cloaked figure said. Donasik's spear appeared in his hand. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's interested in the death of one annoying human." "Tell me, do you want the power to destroy him?" Donasik lowered his spear. "I'm listening."